There we go. So we're also trying to catch up with time. We've already gone 10 minutes over. So I'm going to get right into it. I'm going to tell you a little bit about where Girls for Girls has come from, because we have some people who brand new have never heard about Girls for Girls, save for the acronym G4G. And we will also tell you a little bit about, I'll tell you a bit about the South African side of things, and Audrey will talk a little bit about the Zimbabwe side of things. So we know that Girls for Girls was started by a group of women who had gone to do a master's program in public administration in Harvard. And the famous story is how they campaigned for Hillary Clinton, and she lost, like we all know, which led to an introspection and a thought process that queried why. Are we saying it's not yet time for women to take leadership? Hillary Clinton had been exposed to the White House, had already lived there, had already driven national programs, and yet, you know, she just didn't seem to be able to make that final leap forward. So they took a step back and they asked, you know, is there something that's still missing? We now are professionals. We now have the technical credibility. In fact, some space has been made for us at the table. But the question is, are we chairing the table? Or are we still sitting around the table giving someone else credibility? And that's where the dream of Girls for Girls came from. The challenge is that although we can vote, although we can run for public office, and although there are many amazing things that we're doing, we are still very underrepresented. And we know that. If you look at the statistics in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, across the world, we know that women are still fewer in the workforce, or at least at decision-making level. We also know that when we are there, we are undercompensated. It's common fact now, and it's statistically proven that we don't earn as much as our male colleagues and things like that. So the question is, how do we step up? So we know that the gender gap is slowly beginning to close, but what we want at Girls for Girls is to really close that gap faster so that we can move forward. So Girls for Girls aims to empower girls to lead. That little header that you see on the top right-hand corner. Anytime you talk about Girls for Girls, if someone asks you about Girls for Girls, or if it's that cold morning and you're trying to get out of bed to make it to a mentoring session, that's what you should hold at the back of your mind. We're really trying to create a pipeline of leaders who will step up in our stead. So our big mission is that we want to help young women develop the courage and the vision and the skills to take on public leadership. And you're going to see how that manifests in the modules that we teach. So it's about courage, the willingness to step up, the vision, know where you're going. Don't just be out there shouting agenda. Where are you going? And then the skills, the ability to articulate what your mission and your agenda is. So in Girls for Girls, we recognize public leadership because we are saying it's not enough for you to become a leader and sit with the leadership skills and only benefit yourself. We're looking to change the agenda. So it's not about just saying, great, I'm going to get the leadership skills, I'm going to get the art of communication skills to take me into the board level, and I become a director. And then I sit there and all I'm helping is Rita Motlana and her little family around her. What we are saying is you must also have a very clear vision in terms of what it is we want to change in the bigger agenda for women. How do we open the spaces? How do we close that gap faster? So the women leaders that we are empowering, it's not for themselves to end in themselves. What we are saying is that we want to empower these women, yes, first to help themselves, but to then take it forward so that we actually change the global woman agenda in our own small spaces. But it's definitely to change the status quo so that we don't just, end up sitting in these small spaces that we currently sit in. We talk about giving young women a space for their voices to be heard. And it's one of the things, that's why we have a whole segment on art of communication, whereby we encourage the young women to articulate, what is your vision? And the more they articulate it, our job as mentors is to support and rally and champion these women so that they can actually move forward with that. We have goals and targets. So the big dream, initially we were aiming to support women 15 to 25 years old. But as Girls for Girls started getting implemented across different countries, we even women of 35 years old, till today, even 40-something-year-old women, we heard about that in Kenya, were saying, why don't I have a G4G cohort? So the target group has expanded. It has gone from the 15 to 25 to the 35-year age group. And what does it mean? Where do we meet the young women to be mentored? We meet them in schools, we meet them in universities, maybe it's community projects, maybe it's tertiary institutions, and then in the corporate setting. So in South Africa, we have not yet started in the workplaces. We started off very carefully at university level. This year we have expanded, we expanded lower in terms of age to the high school level. But we're hoping that by the end of this year, we'll actually have started in the workplaces, and Valley is going to be talking about some of the new models that we are thinking about. But the overall vision for Girls is twofold. One is to generate that pipeline of leaders. The women that we're empowering today, what we are saying is that we are beginning to build kind of like a resource pool. They should never say to us, we don't have women on our board because we could not find a chartered accountant. We don't have women on our board because we didn't have someone with the right skills in strategic thinking. No, we're creating that pool. We're coming together and we are saying we are here so that no one will ever have an excuse to say, we can't find the right woman to sit at that decision-making level, whether it's in government, whether it's at corporate level, whether it's leading a community project. So that's what we're doing. We're creating a pool of women who are ready and willing to stand up and say, I am here and I am willing to be part of the change that the world needs. Two, at a personal level, we're helping women gain confidence and to take action to make the changes in their communities, in their families. The news that has been in South Africa the last week is particularly depressing around the gender-based violence. It is unbelievable. I was listening to the statistics coming out of, I think, the first few weeks of lockdown, and they were saying 120,000 women reported gender-based violence. How? In this day and age, are we able to speak up? So that's the starting point. The starting point is we start by empowering the girls before we even start talking about having the bigger change in terms of the global agenda. So every session that you run with the girls, when you walk away, as you say, yes, I went to a Girls for Girls session, ask yourself, did I help give a sister a hand? Did I help give her a voice? Did I help inspire her, even if it's just for her to be able to say 2 sentences that day in your circle? Please empower and encourage the girls. It is not about us. I know all of us are here because we feel we want to help someone, we want to work with someone, we want to give something to someone. But put yourself behind and always keep the girls center forward. What are we doing to empower them? And how do we know we have empowered them? Sometimes it's through voice. We see them begin to speak. Sometimes it is the small things they begin to do. And we shall be sharing with you, for example, some of the things that came out of UJ. So it's about that. If you want to know you're being a successful mentor, it's about creating confidence amongst the mentees that we work with, okay? So I'm going to hand it over very quickly to Zimbabwe. Audrey is going to talk about the cohorts that are currently ongoing, and then I will follow through and talk about the South African ones before we start talking about the modules that we are running. So Audrey?
All right, thank you so much, Rita. I hope our connection is better now. I've seen that it's a bit of a common problem with all Zimbabwean participants here, that our network is a bit slow, but I hope it's better now. So I'm just going to give a brief background on how we started Girls for Girls in Zimbabwe. So we started Girls for Girls in November 2018, and then that's when we opened our arms to the program. Then we started SECOs in January 2019 at Advent Hope Academy. That was our pilot group that we started with at Advent Hope, where we had 60 girls and we had 4 SECOs as well. Then we moved on to launch the Girls for Girls program with Alan from Uganda, who's one of the co-founders, and Florence, who's the country leader for Uganda. So they came over and helped us to launch the program in Zimbabwe. And we did it with B2C Fest for Women and we had 30 young professionals. These ladies are entrepreneurs, startups, and innovators who are part of the B2C co-working network, and we had 3 circles with them. So, so now to just give you a brief rundown of the cohorts that we have as of June 2020 now. So we have the G4 Trust girls, which we did with G4 Trust in Zivarasekwa. There are 20 girls, and we have got 2 circles at G4. They've completed the program and they've actually graduated. Then we've got the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We've got 40 girls and 4 circles at the church. Then we've got Together as One Association, which is an association of people living with people with disabilities, as well as people who support them. And we've got 20 women who are part of this cohort, and we've got 2 circles in the cohort. We also have Chiweshe Farmers Network, Female Farmers Network. So there are 20 female farmers that we're working with in Chiweshe, 2 circles. So we have gone as far as building trust with them. But due to lockdown in COVID-19, we have been disrupted our session. So we are hoping that when the new normal has been embraced, we'll be able to continue with the sessions in Chiweshe. This is a rural community, so connectivity and them going into the digital or in the Internet of Things is a bit advanced for them. So we're looking into continuing with the face-to-face, the physical meetups with them when the new normal has been fully embraced. We also have met with the Mabuku Tafara cohort. I think that's a week ago, and we had over 70 girls signing up for this. So we celebrated International Menstrual Hygiene Day with these girls on different meetup points, observing definitely the COVID-19 requirements. So we're looking into starting circles with them when the new normal has been embraced as well. So we also have the University of Zimbabwe cohort. I see Stacy is here representing the University of Zimbabwe cohort. So at the moment, they are registering the organization with their student affairs at the university, and we're looking to start as soon as schools have opened here in Zimbabwe. So Head Dreams Matter as well was a partnership with B2C First for Women, where we had 30 young professionals and 3 circles. So far, and as of June 2020, these are the cohorts that we have in Zimbabwe. It has been an exciting journey for us, characterized by seemingly insurmountable frontiers, but through partnerships, collaboration, dedication from our mentors and our team leads, we have been able to have this impact that we have had in Africa, for holding hands with us as we've faced major hurdles in Zimbabwe, economic situation, our girls failing to be part of their digital training sessions helping us. And we're looking forward to this sustainable partnership also to be able to impact a lot of girls and move on with the program. Thank you.
Thanks, Audrey. Let me just show the next slide that I have, and I want to draw out some differences. So in South Africa, we have 7 cohorts that we have planned to be active for 2020. University of Pretoria, University of Johannesburg, they're listed there for you. Asnath Mahapa Foundation, which is our STEM cohort. We have the Trevor Huddleston Foundation, which is in the Westbury, Sophiatown area. So it's an area that faces certain social challenges. Then we have Rivers Foundation, who do a lot of work in high density areas. Athlone Girls High School, very interesting group for us. It has a very interesting mix of South African, non-South African students, but a particularly impressive performance in terms of getting into university. And then we have Tomorrow Trust, who support high school mentors. If you compare the cohorts in Zimbabwe and you compare to what's happening in South Africa, it's almost like you're talking to 2 different organizations. But this is actually the trick. For me, what it shows is that Girls for Girls is so versatile. When I heard about the Zimbabwe cohorts, I was like, wow, they have women farmers. You know, they have church groups, but they also have the university. We have in South Africa have adopted a very formalized approach, but my challenge to you today, for all of us who are sitting here, and yes, I know we have signed up for formal institutions, is let's start thinking differently. Let's start thinking about Zimbabwe. How come they're running way more versatile cohorts? What is it we can start doing, especially now during the lockdown? Can we run smaller circles that still allow us to roll out Girls for Girls, or do we have to stay the institutional route? So when I asked Audrey to talk about the Zimbabwean one, I wanted my sisters here in South Africa to see how versatile Girls for Girls is. We tend to see it very formally structured in South Africa, but similarly, I encourage, you know, the Zimbabwean sisters who are here to also see how we run kind of like the bigger groups, because we're able to have bigger numbers. I will draw your attention to the 573 young women that have signed up. Earlier on this year, we thought we were going to aim for 200 or 300 mentees, G4G mentees. But when the registration form hit University of Pretoria, something happened. And so many young ladies signed up. And even now, University of Johannesburg are getting back in touch with us. So it's telling us, especially for those of you who are new Girls for Girls mentors, and if you're still in flux and you're not yet convinced, is there a need? There seems to be a need. In fact, there's a hunger when you look at how many numbers of the young people are signing up. So the graph at the bottom left-hand side shows you how many mentors we have. University of Pretoria in particular, we need to ramp up that number, because you can see it's not correspondent to the 68% of the 573 people that we need. In South Africa, we currently have 2 cohorts that are active. Athlone Girls had managed to start off and had gotten to session 3 out of communication before they closed off. And then for the lockdown, sorry. And then the second cohort is a THMC, the Trevor Huddleston Memorial Center cohort, who cover the Westbury High girls. We have been able to transition onto online mentoring. And we've kind of had some struggles, because we continue to run it like a big cohort, whereas it looks like when you go onto online, you need to have a greater engagement at the circle level, and you'll be hearing some of the experiences coming through. So that gives you a flavor for who our current cohorts, our mentors and our mentee profiles are. But as you go through this session today, my challenge to all of you is try and see things differently. Try and look for new ways, you know, that we can roll out Girls for Girls. I'm cognizant of time, so I'm going to kind of skip through a couple of slides. This is our leadership team. We've got 6 directors in South Africa. We've got Elaine, who is on this call. She's going to be presenting on ethics and values. Asnath Mahapa. Valerie, who is our host, one of our moderators right now, and we'll be talking later. Kinelwe is unable to join us, but most of you will have engaged with her on the South African side. She's kind of our coordinator, administrator. She's not here because of exams. We have Nuska Zwane, who is from Tomorrow Trust. Allen, even the Zimbabwean ladies will know her because she's one of the founders of Girls for Girls, and then myself. I'm going to skip through the cohorts. And I want to talk a bit about the topics that we're going to be covering today. So Girls for Girls, when we say a mentee comes and attends a Girls for Girls mentoring project, there's 6 modules that are covered. For a girl to graduate out of the G4G module program, she must have attended at least 4 sessions, okay? So these are the sessions. I'm going to lay them out for you. You're going to see the logic in them. And that's what we're going to be spending the better part of today doing. Understanding the technical content behind these models, so that when you're running the circles, you know what it is that you're talking about. So the first session is about building trust. And what we're doing in that first session is establishing a comfortable relationship with the girls. They come along, they set up circles, and you're going to hear, we're actually going to have a practical around that. And all we're doing is setting up that mentoring relationship and saying, this is your safe space. This is how we shall be engaging. So you set the rules of the game and how you engage. The next session is courageous leadership. Remember, it's all about empowering the girls to lead. So we start off by helping the girls look internally and seeing themselves as leaders. We then move on to the art of communication, which is about, now that you see yourself as a leader, how do you communicate what it is you want to do to your community, your school, your board, your workplace? What is it you want to do in terms of your leadership responsibilities? How are you now able to start communicating what it is you want to do? Then we move on to negotiation. So you now know how to talk, you know how to lay out your case in a clear, succinct manner. But how do you bring people over now to start seeing things the way you want them to be seen? It then feeds into a session on public service and running for office. You see a bit of debate in terms of what it should actually be named, but it's really about now taking the agenda to the next level. Remember, I said earlier on, we're not just creating leaders to be an end in themselves. We want to change the agenda. So as a leader, you now know what it is you want to do. You have the skills under communication and negotiation to be able to communicate that agenda, and now you're rallying people behind you. And then we close off with ethics and values, because in everything we do, that is where we want you to be able to base your actions on. What is your value system? As you're being a leader, as you're communicating, are you basing that on an ethical and a value-based system, or are you actually being one of those dark leaders that we actually would not want to be associated with? So those are the 6 core modules. But it is very possible for you to do add-ons. Out of the UJ cohort last year, we had a request. When we did the art of communication, we did a role play around a job interview. And it turned out that a number of the girls were sitting interviews. So they said to us, do you mind if we have a whole session whereby we go through interview skills, whether it's for a scholarship, whether it's for a job position, and also how to write your CV? So the 6 modules that are listed here for you are the core. You cannot say you've delivered a Girls for Girls program without having covered the 6. But what we also encourage you to do is to say, what else is it the girls would like? So take Audrey's project, the farmer women. You might find that they say, this is all well and good. The 6 sessions are very valuable to us, but can we also do something on, young business or small businesses? How does one plan? How does one budget? How does one keep the books? Maybe that's what their need is. And you'll find that within your pool of mentors, there will always be someone who can help them. So keep your ear open for that. The methodology of Girls for Girls. And for me, this is one of the, Valerie, I know we are running out of time, but this is like one of the most important slides. This is the way we work, regardless of which session you're in. There's certain underlying things that are happening. I'm going to come and talk in detail about the mentorship. But the way we tend to mentor in Girls for Girls is through inspiration. What do I mean? Inspiration means you give example of self in order for someone to learn from your experience. So at Girls for Girls, we do not teach. What we do is we share our stories. The reason you have stepped up, it's because each of you listening to you today as you introduced yourselves, there's something you want to give of yourself. And to give of yourself means you want to use it, whether it was a positive experience or whether it was a negative experience. You want to share with a young girl what it is that happened to you, that you don't want her, if it's negative, you don't want her to fall into the same boat. You want her to be able to see, even if she's in that negative space, that she can come out of it and thrive. If it's a positive story, it's for the girl to be able to say, wow, Elaine did that. I can actually now take it to the next level. So we share our personal stories as mentors. We also get inspirational speakers. In a number of the sessions, we bring in people who have a story to tell. And that's what we do. We don't invite PowerPoint presentations and nice, flashy, electronic gizmos to the mentoring sessions. What we ask for is that human story, and we love it. I think a number of the mentors the speakers that come and talk at the sessions, they share sad stories, they share challenges in their lives, and they share how they overcome them. So it's not about coming and saying, I'm so great, I'm really good at what I do, and listen to me, this is how I do it. We just tell our story so that every girl sitting in the room is able to draw from it. and draw inspiration from it and be able to then use it to her advantage going forward. In terms of the networking and the learning, I smile when I see that point, because yes, it's important. The girls do come, they grow their network. It's always impressive to see the young ladies always listening and saying, that one is, she works in a bank. That Steffi works in ABSA. She's going to be my connection because I'm interested in going into that sector. So the girls do network, but this one also seems to benefit the mentors quite a bit. And we've seen it. Sometimes the mentors sign up. I think a number of us sign up with Girls for Girls because we know that there's something that's missing in our lives. There's something more we want to do. And some people come and actually find that they grow their network professionally. For me, I'll not lie to you, it's grown my network in South Africa beyond my traditional confines. I very much am family-centered. When I look at April, when we started last year and where we are today, I have grown my village phenomenally. I now know women in circles that I would never have imagined. So the networking and the learning, it's for both the mentees and the mentors. It's very beneficial. I want to talk a bit about the mentoring approach. We have this, and I think all of you received, there's a printout that Valerie shared with all of you with the mentoring 101 pointers. So when we talk about mentoring, and please, this is particularly unique to Girls for Girls, is that we are advisors and that we listen and give guidance. We are not trainers. We are not here to teach. What we do is we say, this is who we are. This is what I'm able to help you with. Bring your problems to me. I am going to listen to them and see how we can get the support. The support might come from me as your circle mentor. It might come from Valerie, who is heading the cohort. It might even come from across the border, from my sister in Audrey, because the challenge you're facing, I know, she has experience to be able to help. So the listening, and you're going to hear it, it's a big part of building trust. The listening that we do is what we call empathic listening. It's where we are listening not to respond with advice. You first listen to understand, what is the challenge I'm facing here? Some of the girls do come with deep challenges, and some come with challenges that any of us can quickly handle. But for us to be able to categorize and know that this is a deep issue that is beyond me, or this is an issue that I think I can help a young person understand, you will not know that and address it correctly if you don't first listen. So empathic listening, if a girl comes and says, I'm really so stressed, it is so tough being in the third year at University of Johannesburg. You don't say why. You should realize how privileged you are to be, at UJ after all. No. You ask empathic questions. Tell me more. You sound frustrated. Let me understand you. You open it up for discussion. You're not yet advising. First, you want to understand. So that's the type of listening that we do at Girls for Girls. And I'm not saying that that's what you will always have to do. Sometimes a person might walk up. I remember Fadzai, who is now a mentor here, when she was a mentee, walked straight up and said to me, this is where my area of interest is. Would you be able to help me here? That very clearly, she was asking me for a response. What we are saying is learn to understand. When a mentee presents the problem, listen. And then categorize. Is this something where I really now need to first spend more time understanding, or is it something where I can start providing a solution? But regardless, what we're doing first is listening. And it then shows in the way we run the sessions. When we run the sessions, it's less about us, the mentors, talking. It is really more about giving girls the voice and the space. You will see that as we run the sessions, we ask a lot of questions. And I know it's uncomfortable. Sometimes I ask questions and there's that awkward silence. People, it's okay. Ask the question and give the girls a chance to come back at you. So what does it mean to have a mission? And yeah, maybe they've never thought about it. And there's that awkward 1 minute, it's okay. Give them a chance to think it through and then come back at you. And that's the way we empower them, by allowing the girls to be able to articulate what their thoughts are, whether it's thinking through the problem, explaining what the problem is to you, they will land at a solution. Or whether it is being part of the discussion and you asking, what do you think are the solutions? It is what empowers them, as opposed to them coming into a room and they sit like this and they're listening to us, Valerie and us, Elaine, giving them a lecture. So please, I encourage you to go through those mentoring tips and be conscious of it, not just now, but every time you're going into a mentoring session, please read them. We are not parents, we do not replace teachers, neither are we preachers, we do not teach. What we do is we come as guides and we give the girls a safe space to be able to listen. Okay. So I've taken a bit of time on that because it's one of the areas that I think maybe we have not been doing extremely well in. And I'm going to skip through a number of the slides. Valerie, let me know, is that where you want to start?
Yes, that's good. Okay, now we're
sorry, Valerie, before I close off, if anyone has any questions, please use the chat. Put your questions over there and then we'll find a time to come back to them. Sorry, Val.
No problem. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how G4G runs. And I think Rita touched on it when she mentioned the network. What one must realize when you join G4G is you're actually joining a global organization. We are now in 17 countries worldwide and growing. And it's phenomenal when you meet when you become a mentor, you might get an opportunity to join the global mentor group and you'll just see you're talking to women all over the world. So we have a global structure. And then in each country has its own team as well. So they, where you do your mentor groups and your mentees, and you generally have data that you analyze according to each country so that we can maintain visibility. There's a legal structure that also has to be set up. Most cohorts have to sign an agreement of some kind or a memorandum of understanding. And then in some countries, you'll have a G4G leadership group or founder or board, and you'll normally have a coordinating team with team leaders, managers, and trainers. Thanks, Rita. Next slide. How we communicate in countries that we have a WhatsApp group, generally a main mentor WhatsApp group, which is once you've completed this training, you can be added to if you like. And then we also have mentor groups per cohort, and then mentees as well have their own WhatsApp groups. Generally, once you have started cohort, you'll have circle WhatsApp groups as well. We have social media accounts on most of the key platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube and LinkedIn. And then there's a global one, and then each country has their own as well. Thanks, Rita. Sorry. How we prepare for sessions. So it's very important. The preparation is key to making sure that you run successful cohorts. I think it's a key in terms of engaging your mentees as soon as possible, and also making sure that they cover all the material beforehand. For each session, there's a video that has to be watched, and so it's good that it's distributed to the mentees beforehand. And what happens is that you encourage the mentees within the WhatsApp groups to actually watch the material and maybe ask them questions about it on the WhatsApp groups as well. The mentors themselves have a planning session before each session. So there are 6 sessions, as Rita discussed. So you have 6 planning sessions before. And what you do is you go through the key concepts. The mentors also have to watch the videos and make sure that they are prepared. And then inspirational speakers must obviously be chosen in advance. You can have an inspirational speaker for each session, but sometimes there'll be sessions that will be more practical, like the negotiation section, the negotiation or art of communication. Sometimes you don't need to, you can just make it very practice-based. We generally try and hold sessions within a 6-month period. It's up to each cohort to decide what they want to do. They can either do it bi-weekly or monthly, whichever suits them. What we try and do is that we try and have individual sessions for each, but if it works for you, you can also run sessions 1 and 2 together and sessions 5 and 6 together. We try not to do 3 and 4 together because they are very practice-based. They're quite intense sessions. And generally sessions last about 2 to 3 hours. what Rita mentioned is that what we're trying to do now, and where possible, is to try and encourage, rather than having big cohorts, that we start doing smaller cohorts. You can do a cohort with one circle, and engaging smaller groups is far easier to manage and easier to make the time to do it. Thanks, Rita.
Okay.
How we monitor progress is that we send out feedback links after each session, so that we get feedback from the mentees and the mentors to make sure that we are doing and meeting the targets that we have to. It's very important that we are sure that what we wanted to achieve in a session is achieved, and we get that from the feedback. And then we can generally readjust where we need to for the next sessions if we haven't quite achieved what we need to. For example, with THMC recently, what we did is we had to actually revisit one of the sessions because we felt we hadn't actually achieved what we wanted to in the session. And it was really important that you do, because each session leads onto, each topic leads onto another. So you need to make sure that the metrics for, or what is the key lesson from that session has been achieved. And then, as Rita mentioned, you must have mentees and mentors must have attended at least 4 sessions to get a certificate of attendance. And this is a really key point, guys, in terms of mentorship. Alan always refers to, what is the word, Rita, that Alan always refers to?
Tourism mentors.
Tourist mentors, yes. Those mentors who don't, they come and pop in for a session here and there, and they don't actually commit to the process or to the girls. And I mean, the girls we need to build trust with the girls. So how you do that is you build a relationship. And we want to build a network where the girls feel that they can call on us when they need to, in terms of, you know. And so it's really important that when you are committed to a cohort, that you attend the cohort. We try and get the dates out in advance on each cohort so that you know when, and you book that time so that you can make sure that you are available. Just breezing in and out, that's not the kind of mentors that we want, G4G. We want people who are committed to the people, to the girls, and to the process. Thanks, Rita.
Okay.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, there's quite a few things that have to be done in terms of getting your cohort set up. You obviously, if you're going to be doing it through an institution, you need to engage with that institution. If you need to identify who your girls are going to be, is it going to be high school girls? Is it going to be students? Is it going to be young corporate ladies in the corporate environment? And then you need to sign a memorandum of understanding with G4G for that. You need to understand how you're going to get the girls to join, and what we found is the most successful cohorts are the cohorts where they actually speak to the girls and get the girls to sign up. They can do it online, and make it an easy process to encourage them to join. And the mentor criteria is that you've got to be passionate about the girls and the women. And we ask all of our mentors, obviously, to sign NDAs and media consent forms, because the way that we grow the profile of G4G is by using lots of material online. Thanks, Rita. As I mentioned again, what we're trying to do in terms of getting the model going is that we're looking at trying to create smaller circles where possible. We haven't really done it in South Africa yet, so I'm encouraging any of you as new mentors that if you find that you have a group of young women that you believe you could start a smaller circle with, please do so. You saw our targets, 1 million girls worldwide by 2025, and we want South Africa to give a significant part of that target. All right, then just in terms of running the G4G cohorts, it's quite admin intensive. You need to have a really good team of coordinators who help you do everything that needs to be done. You need to make sure that all your mentors are trained, that you plan your sessions well in advance, that you do work plans. There's a methodology template, there's a budget template, and then making sure that you prep for each session. And if you need to raise money for funds for whatever your costs may be, like data, or if you're doing it in person, that you have, you can cover your costs in terms of venue and all those kinds of things. It's important that you prep in advance and that you engage everyone in advance. And then afterwards, it's important that you do the monitoring and the evaluation. And then after 6 months after graduation, we revisit those cohorts to see whether the girls have put the work into practice. And if not, how we can adjust again to help them do that. Thanks, Rita. All right.
Sorry,
That's fine.
can I just, so I think this is where we are now, encouraging people to think differently. The South African cohorts have been visualized to be the 7 institutional-based cohorts. So you have, for example, 50 girls at University of Johannesburg, and they run as a group. And when they meet, it's only for pieces of segments of each session that they then break away into circles. What we are thinking of, and I don't know, Alan is supposed to be joining us. I don't know whether she's yet on the call. Alan, if you're here, let me know. But in East Africa, they're having a very interesting success whereby the cohort is the circle. So for example, and Gloria, I think when you logged on earlier on today from the University of Val, we were talking about it. You can actually just set up your cohort/circle where you just have maybe 10, 12 girls who run as the group. This makes it less intensive in terms of the coordination, in terms of the working. And I think it's perfect for these online days, if we may call it that. It's a much simpler model to run. So if you look at all these different things that Val has talked about, then it actually might become way more affordable. It's been extremely expensive fundraising, for example, for the data at THMC, because we are hosting 15 girls, 2 gigs of data each. We always have to put our, pennies together, that type of thing. But imagine if you're just running a smaller group, it becomes way more feasible. So my encouragement, especially to the South African sisters, is to really start thinking about, how can we do things differently in South Africa? Are we okay?
All right. So
yes, is it possible to have a group of mixed mentees? For example, having university students and having women in business, and at the same time high school students. So Barbara, I think that would be a bit difficult, because when you pitch, and you're going to see it as you go through the modules, the way you impart the knowledge, it tends to be, you pitch it for the audience that you're dealing with. I'm going to give you an example. At THMC, the Westbury cohort, we have some high school girls, so girls as young as 15 years old. And then we have, I think, up to a 22-year-old. So she's in university. In fact, she dropped out of a course and then came back in. I struggle in that group because she is the older girl is so advanced. You say something, even her set scenarios, when you say, give me an example of how you typically negotiate, her negotiations are completely different than what the 15-year-old is negotiating. So when we're trying to, for instance, do a skit or a role play, or when we're giving examples, you find that now you have to answer to 2 different audiences. You have to deal with the teenagers as well as the older age groups. So my experience, and I don't know, maybe someone else might want to say something, my experience is try and have a homogeneous group. If you're dealing with university girls, deal with university girls. The high schoolers will have their own challenges. The professional women will have their own challenges. Unless you have a particularly mature person, so someone who is at university, but is, she's a mature student, and her mind and her mindset and her interests are at a different level. So I would say no, try and have homogeneous groups.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, keep the question.
Natasha, it's over to you. Natasha's going to take us through the first session of Building Trust. Natasha?
I'm here. Sorry. I had to go put on 176 layers because my gas heater just ran out of gas. So I had to go put on some clothes. Oh, goodness. So I'm going to walk everyone through the first session you'll have as mentors. And it's called the introductory session, obviously, but it's also about building trust, which Rita had spoken about. This is the most important session. Sorry to all the other people presenting their own sessions, but only because it lays the foundation for the rest of the sessions. It's about getting to know your mentees and then getting to know you, and it sets the tone I think, for the rest of your training sessions. So basically it will look like what we've just done, that everyone in the big plenary session will go through what G4G is about, the ethics behind it, the way it works, etc. And then there'll be a video, either with a Harvard alumna, or the mentors will share their stories. And then if there's a guest speaker, and the guest speakers are generally, well, actually they're always phenomenal women, very empowered ladies who are leaders. But for the first session, you don't necessarily need one. Again, you know, your cohorts are your own to suit your needs and to suit your style of hosting them. So yes, then it could be time for the guest speaker, perhaps not. But then you go into the most important bit, which Rita and Val have mentioned, which is the circles. And in G4G, we call them villages. And your first session with your mentors is all about building your villages. Building trust is about breaking down walls. It's about building bridges. It's sharing your stories, and especially getting your mentees to share their stories so that you know each other. You've created a safe space where they feel like they can trust you, where they feel valued, where they feel like they have a right to be there. We bring in, well, all of you who are clearly incredible in your own right. You bring in women like Asnath, who was the first Black female pilot in South Africa. You bring these incredibly powerful, phenomenal women. And the point of G4G is not to intimidate, it's to inspire. But if you're feeling very disempowered in your life, or if you've never had access to women like this, it can be a little intimidating. So by sharing your stories and letting the mentors share their stories, you can see that having such phenomenal women is there to inspire them and not for them to be scared about. It's that you too can become these women, the Asnaths of the world, the Elaines of the world, the Ritas of the world. Also, it's about, the first session is getting the girls to share their hopes and dreams and challenges and fears. And that's important because it makes them also in a circle feel less alone. There's going to be commonalities in their fears and challenges. It could be about not getting a job or not being in the right course or whatever it is, stuff at home with their parents, but it's about sharing it so that there's a commonality between you all, and also because the circles have a strict code of confidentiality, they know that this will stay there. They know that this is a safe space for them to feel valued and to feel safe and free to be who they are. So there's a saying, I don't know if you've ever heard it, where it says people are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And I think that's what the circles are about. In the circles, we learn to build trust, like I said, in your village, but you also specifically learn to trust the women, other women. But it's because for the mentors and for the mentees especially, you don't know what you're going to bring to each other's lives. There could be a reason that Joyce is in my group, and Joyce could just be a great shoulder for me to lean on when I need it. It could be a season that Fadzai is with me, you know, and the season could just be this G4G cohort, but we get a lot out of our interaction, and then, you know, that's where it sort of ends for us, but we've learned a lot. Or it could be a lifetime bond that you're developing here. So building trust is so key, because you don't know what you as mentors will get out of your mentees, and obviously vice versa, and more importantly, what they'll get from you. So like Rita said, it's so important to listen with empathy all the time. Don't dominate, especially as mentors. You are there to share your stories, but it's almost as a prompt for the girls to share theirs. It's not for you to overpower them in any way. And it's for you to ask questions to get the girls to be more interactive with you. So for an example, if a girl said, I'm having trouble with A, B, and C, it's not for you to just immediately be like, no, don't do that. There's no judgment here at all. It's more for you to throw it back to the group and to the girl and say, well, in facing this, based on what you've seen in the videos you watched, the G4G videos, or based on what a leader said in her inspirational talk, what lessons can you draw from that in order to help you with this scenario you're facing? Or what lesson do you think Rena can use based on what, a leader said? So it's about using your circles as a safe space, but also as a resource. And that being said, I think we should now break into circles, well, so that we can practice what we can. If you give me, so this is what we're about to do. We're going to be split into circles. Each circle will have one of the speakers today, one of the already established mentors, and then the new trainee mentors will be acting as the mentees. So basically in your circle, you're going to do 3 tasks. The quicker, the better, but do it properly. So you're going to introduce yourself and you're going to say who you are and why you're here. Why do you want to be a G4G mentor? And then you're going to set 2 ground rules. So it can be about confidentiality. It can be about your expectations. It can be about attendance. We've said in order to graduate from G4G, you have to attend at least 4, but maybe for your specific circle or cohort, you'd like it to be 5. So set 2 rules for your circle. And then the third and final thing is to name your circle. Give us a name. And then when we come back to the plenary session in about 10 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes, depending on if Val yells at me or not, but she doesn't yell. When we come back, make sure you've nominated one person or chosen one person to come back and tell us, these are the ground rules, this is what you named your circle and why you named it, just so that you get a feel for what this is like. Okay?
Okay, we are all back, yeah?
Yep.
Go for it, Tasha.
Well, I don't know, do we have enough time for everyone to have a rep?
We are running very far behind, but it's okay. Maybe more volunteers or maybe 1 or 2 circles.
No, we all fine. We all good.
But
I can go for Can I go for my team? What an amazing group of we spoke for 10 minutes or less, but in that very quickly we established the fact that we all stand for the same thing. We are women who are for women. I think there was very, very quickly on rapport amongst us, a warm, powerful group of women. We ended up with, I think, 3 things for us as rules of engagement: equality, respect, inclusion, and then our name is Women Deliver. And what is amazing is because time was running out, we didn't have enough time to go around asking all of us what our contribution is around rules of engagement and even the name. Yeah. One person gave us rules of engagement, one person gave us the name, but we were so in tune with each other, we had no debates and we were all comfortable to go, yes, yes, yes. So that for me, I think, attests to the power of why it's so important to very quickly try and find what is common and what it is that binds you. We trust the 4 of us who did not have a chance to contribute a name or contribute the rules of engagement, trusted the other women who did, that when you speak, you're speaking for all of us. So that was a fantastic thing too.
That's incredible. Well done. Well done to your team. Group 4 was Bravehearts. Thanks, Val. Anyone else, one other group, want to say what they named their group and why, and some ground rules or your experience of the group? Did you feel listened to? How do you feel about circles?
Okay, so I'll go.
Thank you, Obile.
I don't want to lie to you. I can't remember what group number it was.
That's
But we
okay.
had some great people on that group. Sorry, Elaine.
Oh, number one then. You in group
Okay,
one.
cool. So group one, we've called ourselves, we've chosen the name Trailblazers, and someone in the group, okay, Elaine put it on there. We basically would like to be part of this because of wanting to give back. And of course, we enjoy mentoring and have had mentors in our lives, as well as just wanting to be a testimony that it is possible to succeed, no matter what you come from or what experience you've had. And one of the things some of the things that we agreed on as ground rules is confidentiality, trust, no judgment, I don't know it all, as well as just being each other's keepers and respect. We definitely agreed on a name very quickly, and Trailblazers was everyone's agreement. Yes, we agreed on that. And then, yeah, it was a great conversation. Everyone joined in, everyone participated, and the sense is that we all just want to give back and make a difference. So that was very nice.
I'm just going to make, thanks so much, Kobile. I'm just going to make Fadzine talk quickly because she was a mentee and now she's a mentor. So I want to hear her experience of being on the circle, but now she's going to be handling her own circle. So Fadzine, and especially because you were in my group, and I'm sure we did the best. So, no, I'm kidding. Fadzine?
Yes. Okay, what am I supposed to say?
Well, tell us about your experience of our group. What did we come up with?
Okay. I think what was amazing about my group is that it's people that I wasn't engaged with last year. It's like people who are new to me. Yet it seems like we all still have the same ideologies of wanting to uplift people, wanting to pass on, what we've learned. I mean, even me at my young age, I've always had a passion for mentorship. Ms. Rita knows this very well, but, being able to see that you're not the only one who has that kind of a mindset to want to help the next person. So the name we came up with in our group was Simba, and Simba means strength, right? Yes, oh my gosh. Yes, Simba means strength in Shona. And I think that's exactly what we want to achieve going forward, as a cohort, or is to give women that strength that they need in order for them to succeed. So yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I hope you all, found the benefits of having circles. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you understood now how it works.
Natasha, I think
yes.
Our circle, we
you also want to talk?
I want someone from our group to give
fantastic.
Because ours was a real session. Nabila, may I pick on you because you are
here.
Yeah.
Hi. So I think what I appreciated about the circle was Rita actually threw us in the deep end and go, okay, so you're actually going to facilitate this. Who wants to do it? And I appreciate that because it gave us an actual feel of how it will play out, in the real thing. So I think a lot of just sharing the sentiment. We spend time getting to know the people in the group, what they're about and who they are. And it's, again, a diverse set of ladies with their own experiences as well as their own passions and ambitions, which we all really appreciate. Gloria from our group actually shared that the rules, is like many have been saying, is that it's based on trust, it's based on confidentiality, it's based on empowerment. And so those are the things that we need to uphold. We ran out of time at the minute we were about to start with group names, and so, but I just hopefully I'm just speaking on behalf of the people that were in the group. But while we were talking, I just felt this silent force that's the undercurrent of everything that G4G is about. And so my suggested name for the group was Female Force, because that is what we need to own, and we need to actually make the cornerstone of how we interact. And we are a force to be reckoned with. So that's our group name.
Well done.
Well said. But the reality is we also face some challenges. We couldn't get to the norming because of the internet. We lost about 2-3 minutes trying to listen to people. That's the reality, good people. We also run out of time. That's the reality. When you run in circles, it sounds like, oh my God, what am I going to do with 40 minutes? But you find that when women start to talk, they really start to, like Val is now telling me, it's time to move on to the next session. But when the sharing starts, you have to be able to manage it, because people, especially when they're feeling safe, which is a very good tick, it means you're succeeding. But at the same time, you now need to manage it so that you can allow the other person to speak and to be able to get through your full agenda. So again, it's something one needs to be very aware of, that you're managing time, but you want people to be comfortable and feel safe and share and that type of thing. So there's always a balancing act that is happening. So hopefully everyone learned a little bit of something, yeah?
Can I give
10
feedback?
minutes is not long enough at all, no lie. I don't know if anyone...
Wait, someone was saying something? Priscilla,
me? Yes, it's the very, very last group. I'll be very quick and brief.
No,
I'd like to say I was in a great group with very powerful women, and what I enjoyed in that group is we all have the same drive and the same goal of wanting to help and empower young women into being better people at the end of the day. And we came up with ground rules, 6 ground rules of respect, giving each other space to talk, no judgment, participation, open-mindedness, and enhancing humility. And we then did not have enough time to discuss the name of the group, but we ended up going with Eagles.
Eagles, that's fantastic. Yeah. Thank you guys. I hope that was fun. It was really fun for me, actually. Just to wrap up, the introductory session, the building session, I just want to talk about a few things quickly to be wary of, to look out for when you are doing circles and in the whole G4G space. I think it was Val who mentioned it earlier, is that becoming a mentor is a great first step, and I applaud you all for even coming to training and stuff. But it's really important, I think maybe at the end of today, when we're done with this training, just to take some time out and think, what is your why? You've all said in your group why you want to do this, but think about your why in connection to the level of investment you're able to give into being a mentor. It is, you'll see your mentees every so often, but there's a lot of things that go on in between, especially as we're trying to navigate COVID times, where you might need to have separate WhatsApp circle groups or talk to your mentees individually. So it is a big commitment. So like Rita said, like Alan says, if you are worried that you won't be able to be committed right now, rather just err on the side of caution, because being committed, being present, and being accountable to your mentees is so important. They need to know, like Val said, that they can trust you, and they can only trust you if you are the same face they keep seeing all the time, Yeah, so I said investing your time and energy is really important to make the girls feel safe. They'll want to know, can they trust you? If you're there, do you care about me? Are you the person who's going to help me get to where I want to go with this, the leader I want to become, the role model, the mentor, the whatever, the woman I want to become? And that they can only see that from their interaction with you. Again, be wary of dominance, both by mentors and mentees. If someone is talking a little too much, we spoke in our little circle about maybe having a very gentle and playful, like either code word, or maybe like you tug on the ear or something, just so everyone knows it's like your little secret in your group, that if you feel someone is, talking a little too much and nobody, it's not as balanced as it could be, maybe say, whisper pineapples, whatever it is, but it's about making your group your own, it's your own style of your circle. And also keep asking questions, especially to the quieter ones. Don't be a bully, but just draw them out of their shell a little bit. Don't impose your personal norms, beliefs, value systems on them. This is a safe space. It is meant to be sensitive and non-judgmental. So like we keep saying, listen with empathy, and please, please, please keep an open mind when you are talking to your mentees and to anyone from G4G. We all are from different walks of life. We've all led very different lives, and we will get the most out of each other when we're non-judgmental. It's a bit tricky, especially when we're not face to face, you know, in the same room or whatever, but try and look out for body language, triggers almost. If someone looks uncomfortable or someone is crossing their arms when you're look out for those little things so that you can gently probe at it to see, is this a topic that makes you uncomfortable? Is it triggering to you? It will also especially help with extreme challenges that may need to be escalated. So if someone is, I don't know how, but if we're talking about mental health challenges, you know, and look out for people's body languages. Someone who's feeling suicidal or whatever, that's something that needs to be escalated, which can be in your South Africa group, your Zimbabwe group. You never know who can help out, but if it needs to be escalated, that's what you have this resource for. But then look out for those little telltale signs in your mentees. And I think that's it. I think that's it from us. When you're done with your circle group, like we did now, someone will come back, they'll discuss what it is in the big plenary session. You'll have given homework. So for example, if it was now, I'd give homework for the next session, which is courageous leadership. The girls will think about speakers that they really admire, why they admire them, leaders they really admire them, and that sort of thing. And that'll be the end of your first session. Yay! Sorry, Val, please don't be mad at me.
Madness happening here.
Well done, Natasha. I know I'm now feeling under so much pressure, but okay, let me collect myself. So, the courageous leadership, I know Natasha said building trust is important, and you cannot underpin how important it is because it's setting the ground rules. But then you now come to the real content, and that's where courageous leadership kicks off from. It is what we're seeking to do. Please mute yourself if you have background noise. What we're seeking to do is to help the girls see themselves as leaders. The famous quotation that comes out of the video on courageous leadership by Professor Nancy Cohen is that leaders are not born, they are made. The trick of this session, if you want to know you've had a successful session on courageous leadership, is that every girl that walks out of the session leaves feeling, I can be something. There is that leader in me. I just need to discover who that leader is and in what direction that leader needs to go. So that's what we are trying to do. We are convincing the girls that within each of the women sitting in front of us, there is a leader that is just waiting to unleash. And by the way, sometimes we already have leaders sitting in front of us. The trick there is then to allow them to see how even greater their leadership capacity is. So that's what we're aiming to do in courageous leadership. So the way we do it is this fold. We help the girls identify role models or leaders in their lives, okay? So it's very normal that if I ask you, who is a leader that you think of, the likelihood is you go very far. In fact, I would like to ask you, sorry, Ashi, please mute yourself. I'm trying to mute you and I can't. Okay. I'm going to ask you in the chat box right now, each of you, put down a leader that you admire and why. I'm going to give you half a minute to do that very quickly in the chat box. A leader that you admire and why.
Does it have to be a non-leader or it can be?
You define what leader means to you, and that's part of what we are trying to unpack here.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. So we have Michelle Obama. Why? She's charismatic and authentic. Nabila has her grandmother. Nabila, please tell us why your grandmother. So again, Michelle again has a passion of giving back. Natalie Jabangwe, she's a trailblazer with a focus, sharp visionary. My mother, that's Elaine. She was fearless and passionate. Fina also says, my mom, but you're not telling us why. I want to hear why. In Girls for Girls, we will always ask you why. We don't want the what alone. So the what is your mother, it's Michelle Obama, but we also want to know why. It gets harder. So someone says her great-grandmother, tenacious, visionary, courageous, wise. Kamala Harris, authentic and compassionate, yeah? So we can keep going. So please keep writing that down. So this is how we start. We start off the session by asking the girls, who is a leader in your life? Which is what I just asked all of you. Now, for some people, they immediately see it very close. Elaine immediately said her mother. And I think, who was it who asked a question? Munashe asked, is it someone in, that's part of the trick. Do the girls see leaders in their lives or do they see leaders out there? And it already begins to give you an idea as to how they perceive leadership. There are some who leadership is already in their homes, the ones who are saying their mother, their grandmother, and things like that. And then there's some, yes, it's in your home, but maybe you're already now aspiring towards someone else. So under courageous leadership, we are helping the girls identify a leader that they can look up to. But more than just saying, this is who the leader is, or this is who the role model is in my life, this is why. And the reason you're asking them why, the reason I asked each of you, who is that leader and why do you like them? You're beginning to have an insight as to what is important to you. So those of you who are saying, you know, your grandmother, because she was wise, she was tenacious, it means whoever wrote that, those are things that are valuable for her. So when Elaine, I think, says, you know, her mother was strong, that is what she's saying, that she herself, if she's to be a leader, she will want to be seen as a courageous leader. And we're doing it in a very practical way, rather than just teaching about leadership in absentia. We're giving you someone to latch onto, something real, something that you have spent time on, and for you to identify what that value system is, and to appreciate what those leadership qualities are. And then link it back to yourself. And that's what I always say to the girls, that the fact that you like Michelle Obama, the fact that you've identified Oprah Winfrey, and the reasons you like Oprah gives you an insight to yourself. But it also allows you to see that it's not about the personality, it's the qualities that make the leader. So if you can build those qualities in your life, whether it's through skill, whether it's through association, if you build those qualities, it means you're capable of being a leader. And at the end of this session, we then challenge them not only to turn themselves into leaders, but to be able to act on the leadership. In other words, you step out and you start taking on leadership responsibilities. That's a long introduction to courageous leadership, but I want you to understand it. Because from here, I'm going to give you what the 4 component principles are, but it is critical that you understand the content behind the leadership. This is not a session where we lecture and we train people on the principles of leadership. The objective of this session is to allow the girls to see themselves as leaders. There's a bit of a difference than attending a leadership course where you understand leadership and then seeing that, my goodness, this is the type of leader I would like to be. So there are 4 principles. There's a video that comes with the courageous leadership model. We always send it in advance and allow the girls to watch it. At UJ, there were times when if they couldn't watch it in advance before coming for the session, we'd just say, come early, and then, you know, the 30 minutes that you come before, you have a cup of tea and you're able to watch the video. So that's what we would do. It is complicated. Actually, it is, you will only get 50% of the results if you do not get the girls to watch the video. You as mentors will learn a lot from it, but even for the girls, it's a long video, but she illustrates it and tells the story of, you know, what it takes to be a courageous leader so well. So it's important that they watch the video. So one of the first principle under courageous leadership is to know your mission or your purpose in life. And that said, it makes sense, right? I think all of us who have been to leadership sessions, it's the first thing they say is that, oh, that leader knew what they wanted to do. So that's the first step we're saying to the girls. For you to be a leader, you do need to understand what your mission and your purpose is. And that's why we start off by asking them, who is the leader you admire? And what are the qualities that you admire in that person? And then you can now challenge them and say, okay, if that is what is important to you, if these are the things that become purpose in your life, or they become part of mission in your life, how do you
Rita,
we can't hear you.
On and off.
really
keep covering your speaker or something? We can't hear you.
Okay, I think part of it is that I'm also moving around a lot. Is that any better?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay, sorry about that. But you've followed me so far. Please don't tell me I need to repeat. Okay. Okay. So knowing your mission, part of what we do is you have to give the girls comfort. It does become overwhelming. Because when we look at leaders that are already made today, if you look at Michelle Obama, who seems to be very popular in the chat box, it's as if Michelle Obama knew what she wanted to be and materialized into this leader. She did not. And this is where we begin to share stories with the girls, because they'll walk in and they'll see people like Steffi and Natasha and Valerie, and they're thinking, wow, such accomplished women. Asnat Mahapa, first Black, but they didn't know from the beginning who they were going to be today in 2020. So the first comfort under know your mission is to allow them to understand that it takes time to build a mission. And in the video, a lot of time is allocated to that. But it's really up to you. You'll find your mission in bits and pieces. Very rarely does a person from the word go know what their mission is. And as you're in the circles, that's part of what the dialogue is going to be about. Not just the what of have a mission. It is to help the girls understand how they can begin to define their mission. So that's why we say to them, for example, identify a leader, and then, what it is that you like about that leader. So if you, for instance, say that you admire, I don't know, someone said hardworking, that the ethics of hardworking, then how do you then turn yourself into a person that is hardworking? Or if someone says, I love that they're inspirational when they speak. Barack Obama, of course, is someone we always quote, how eloquent he is. What did it take for Obama to get to where he is and the eloquence that he's at? Is it practice? So that you now unpack it for the girls and they're able to say, okay, fine, this isn't my mission, but I do want to be an inspirational life changer in someone's life, maybe in the environmental cause or something like that. But when you then say, these are the values, and then you begin to unpack it for them and say, so this is what you're going to need to practice. Suddenly, developing a mission becomes achievable. Are we together? Yeah? Okay, so sometimes I look for nods and things like that. I tend to be highly interactive. So the challenge with a lot of the mentees, we ask them that question in the baseline survey when they are registering. Tell us your fears, your dreams, and we try and figure out what are their life goals. It is so sad, and I say this all the time, how a number of them talk about their goal being just to make it into the next year. Their goal being just to complete their course at the university. That is not a life mission. So it's important that you're able to explain these things to the girls and say to them, completing your degree is a step towards something bigger, but you need to be able to define what that bigger is. Okay, so and one of the things I think we can do better, we have not been very good at it, is sharing the baseline information that the girls complete with the circle leaders. We have been keeping it at cohort level, which means that you see, like I always had the visibility of the 30-something UJ girls, but what I'm thinking is that going forward, we should be sharing that input with the cohort leaders, sorry, the circle leaders, so that they're actually able to say, okay, it's very evident that someone has a big dream and has not yet been able to articulate it. Or someone is really just thinking short, is just thinking within the next 6 months and passing the exam, as opposed to being able to define their mission. And then I think you're able to provide better support for each of the girls. So always make sure that the threat around having that life mission, the life purpose, it is understood that it's not something that you know immediately, but it is something that you can work on and you can build on, and you help the girls understand what support you can give them to be able to define what that mission is. It might be talking to someone, it might be reading. Okay, the second principle under courageous leadership is investing in information gathering years. If you think about it, that's what you're doing in order to build your mission. Now, investing in your information gathering years, it's a natural thing that a lot of us do. The investment in the gathering years might mean having bad experiences or having good experiences that you grow on. If I think about my life, I've had some very interesting detours. Yes, I'm a lawyer. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I ended up working in the development space. But I'll tell you that I once even dabbled in politics while I was at university. And I just discovered I didn't like the interaction with the people. I found it very negative, and I didn't like the principles they stood for. But I wasted about 6 months trying to do that. I've invested in businesses and been part of businesses for about 2 years. And it made me understand that, wait a moment, Rita, running after the money alone is not something that you want. It took me 2 years to realize that in my life, I don't want to be 96 years old on my deathbed. And the only achievement I will say is I made a lot of money, and I walked away from it. So investing in your gathering years is not a waste just because it's a negative experience. And that's something important for the girls to understand. You will find that some of them, for instance, will try a course, they don't like it, or they sign up to come and study something at the university and they don't like it. And then they now hit themselves and say, I wasted my time. You didn't waste your time. There's something you discovered about yourself. You refined what it is that you like and what it is you don't like. So the investment in the gathering years, it's to give the girls the comfort that it's okay, spend your time. And then give practical tips. In the circles, give practical tips as to how to invest in gathering years. And I love this part because the girls themselves now start advising each other. They say, but don't you watch YouTube and bloggers and that type of thing? Yeah, instead of wasting your time looking at, I don't know, influencers and whatever it is, if you're watching an influencer or if you follow an influencer, make sure it's an influencer who is going to add value to your mission. So use, whether it's books you read, if you invest time reading, then make sure it's on subjects and topics that help you towards your mission. So I love those sessions because sometimes the girls take over and they start giving each other tips in terms of what it actually means to invest in your gathering years. The third concept under courageous leadership is grow your village, choose and grow your village. We started that in building trust. The concept of village under Girls for Girls it's the centerpiece of everything. We, unlike the traditional technical mentoring, whereby we say, pick one person who is going to mentor you. I think that's the traditional model most of us know. We say, surround yourself with people who will answer to the different needs in your life. If you stop and think about it, Fadzai, Nabila, Barbara, Rina, you're all such complicated individuals. There's so many different facets of you. How can Rita come and mentor you in all those facets of your life? I can't. I might only be able to support one aspect of your life, but you might find that in another aspect, Natasha is better suited for it. Mabatu is better suited for it. And that's the concept of village. And when we talk about choose your village, it means you're empowering the girl. You're saying you get to decide who you surround yourself with. But as you surround yourself with people, and I've seen it happen, sometimes people walk around, they collect business cards. But I ask, why did you collect Valerie's business card? You must also ask yourself, as you surround people and create your village, be very clear about what you want from each and every person in your village. And I loved what Natasha said. Sometimes people enter your village for a very short period. It might just be to help me sit that accounting exam. And once I'm done, that's it. Steffi is out of my life. She coached me, she mentored me through those exams, and that was it. And then you might choose people who are in your life for a longer period. I might choose Mabatu and say, look, I really admire the way she interacts and engages with people. And I know that, for instance, it's something that I need to work on. So Mabatu might be in my life for a longer time, but I'm very specific. So the girls have to be intentional about the people that they're putting into their village and to accept that there might be people that they let in and that they let out, because some people might be toxic. You think you're inviting someone into your village because, Valerie sounds all nice, her story is all great, but when I get to know Val, I realize that Val actually doesn't hold me up. That Val is actually, a person who makes me feel not so good about myself. It's okay. Then you say, okay, Val, you're no longer, sorry, Val, I keep picking on you. I let you out of the circle. So it has to be, again, very practical in terms of the way we explain things to the girls. And I say this because when you read these principles, the principles, they all sound, I think all of you are going to get a mentoring guide. You've already gotten a script that Valerie shared out with you. When you look at the principles, they all sound so common sense. The trick is to be able to impart the knowledge to the girls in a manner that it is practical for them. So when we talk about growing your village, it's about positive energy. It's about including people who will hold you up and not put you down. The lady in the video talks about surrounding yourself with givers, people who will give you, they'll give you advice, they'll give you that positive energy, they'll give you that support, not surrounding yourself with people who are now going to exhaust you and take energy away from you. So we always ask the girls, who is in your village? And it's interesting that sometimes some focus only on their friends. And there's always that one who says, but my mother is part of my village. And this is why she's part of the, we always ask, why? Why do you think they're part of the village? What reasons do you think they're in your village for? And it's interesting, you immediately begin to see that now they intentionally are going to have people in their village or not. I attended a fireside chat with a Ugandan group yesterday, and interestingly, someone who was giving insights as to what it takes to join the C-suite. She talked about having a personal board of directors. And I thought to myself, who is in my board of directors? And I thought, okay, so that's, another word for village. So that's a really good analogy to share with young professional women. The last principle, the last key principle under courageous leadership is to keep your eye on the bigger picture. So even when you think you have defined your mission, it still happens that your mission is continuously evolving. Like for me, I think about 10, 15 years ago, I thought that I'd defined my mission. It is to serve people. I came through so many different ways. I've tried many different things. And I felt really happy when I started working with the Global Fund against HIV, TB, and malaria. Every year, I can say to you how many people, I was able to support collectively with my colleagues in terms of putting people on ARVs, in terms of getting anti-TB medication to them. And I thought that I had nailed it, I had defined it. But there's always that hunger that keeps coming back at you. And I think that's what we're saying. Keep pushing yourself. There's probably a bigger picture, even when you think you've defined your mission. So for me, over the last few years, as a professional, I'm excelling. I cover over 15 countries. I've worked on 4 different continents, but I still felt a certain hunger. So when Girls for Girls materialized, I realized, you know what? I've been doing a lot of helping people and development work, but from a professional perspective. Here was a one opportunity for me now to work one-on-one at a personal level with the girls. But even when we started Girls for Girls South Africa last year, I really thought it was about starting Girls for Girls in South Africa. When I look at where we are today, now we have Zimbabwe sitting in the room with us. Can I really say that my Girls for Girls agenda is only for South Africa? Hell no. It is extending to Africa. So I find that you always need to challenge yourself. And I think that's what the professor means when she says, keep your eye on the bigger picture and keep pushing from pillar to pillar. Sometimes that means just at the times when you think things are at your very worst, you're in class, you're failing your subjects, it's okay. Just keep hanging in there, keep pushing yourself through. But at a broader level, it also means keep pushing yourself, keep refining your mission, because I don't think it's enough, especially if we say we're going to change the woman's agenda, to just say, now I've arrived and I'm comfortable with it. So those are the 4 key principles. I'm not going to talk a lot about how we do it. We really just use an inspirational speaker, and then we break into the circles, and we basically discuss those 4 points. As I was discussing the principles, I was giving you very practical tips that you can share when you're in the circles with the girls. Things I would warn you against as you're delivering the Courageous Leadership session. Be very careful. Remember, we tell you to tell your story and to share your story, or to get someone else's story. Be very careful about overwhelming the girls and imposing yourself on the girls. And it goes back to the skills we're talking about in listening, under building trust. always share your real story. We had Advocate Mujanku, former advisor to Thabo Mbeki, President Mbeki. And when she came, I think everyone thought she was going to talk about the great things she did together with Mbeki. No, she told us some of the toughest moments it meant to be a legal advisor to the president, and gave us that human side. And I think the girls, when in the evaluation, rated it as one of the best sessions because she, in building trust, she talked about, you know, the space that women need to occupy and what it means to be a woman in a very male-dominated space. So be very careful about imposing yourself and saying, you know, this is how you do it. Listen to the stories and creating that distance in between them. Val, I can see you rubbing the hands. I think that's signal for you're done. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to me. If there are any questions, put them on the side. I love what Audrey is saying. Make your comments. Feel free to make your comments in the chat box. And as always, we will remain available even after this session for you to get in touch with us and for us to keep on discussing the courageous leadership principles. Thank you very much. Val? You're on mute, Val.
Thank you so much, Rita. Ladies, we're running about half an hour behind, so I'm going to ask you please just to be a little bit patient as we move into the next sessions. Our next speaker is going to be Steffi, and Steffi is going to talk to us about the session on art of communication. Thanks, Steffi.
Thank you, Va. So ladies, I just wanted to open the discussion first by asking one of you to volunteer to answer one simple question. Why do you think it's important for us to speak about the art of communication as part of this Girls for Girls mentorship program? Can I have one of the new mentor give it a try?
I'll go. It's Mobile here, sorry.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
So I think it's important if we're building leaders or working towards being a leader to be able to articulate yourself completely well, but also to relate to the people that you're articulating yourself to. So it's from that perspective that the art of communication is important.
Thank you so much. That's brilliant. You've just summarized my entire session. But what I wanted to start with is draw the link between how the fact that we do art of communication as the third session is really because it builds on session 1 and session 2. So if we go back to session 1, and Natasha told us about building that trust. So really at the beginning, it's about telling the girls, welcome into the Girls for Girls family. We are creating a safe space for them to be able to share with us their dreams, their aspiration, but also their fears without them being judged, right? Then we went into session 2 that Rita just presented to us, the courageous leadership. And really what it is about is encouraging them to get that courage to act and take on those leadership positions. And what's important in Girls for Girls is leadership for us is not about them becoming the next Nelson Mandela. They can occupy and act on that leadership in their church, at school, in the corporate world, really even in their family, you know, leading as in the context of a family. So what we do in art of communication is we tell them that as they start building on stepping up in those leadership roles, how to communicate effectively. And really, if I want us to remember one thing, and we've said it over and over again, it's about telling your story. So this session is really going to be about giving them the skills to learn how to tell their story. And so this session really is a very skills-based session. So it tends to be a very heavy session. So we really encourage coordinators of the different cohort to avoid combining this third session with any other session. Whereas, for example, session 1 and 2, building trust and courageous leadership, it has happened at times that we do combine those sessions, but really try and avoid combining the art of communication. So when we speak about communication, for me, I think communication is something that's not easy. We all, to a certain extent, struggle with it. It's either someone could struggle with it because they have the fear of public speaking. Others could struggle just communicating and articulating their message, right? It can come in various forms. But what's important to note is that communication is not about just picking up and, talking. Communication is really also about that emotion that relationship that you create with your audience. So there's a number of things that, a number of skills that we impart to the girls in this session to allow them to start communicating to start communicating successfully. And maybe before I go into those 4 key principles that we learn in Art of Communication, I wanted to share a story about how I personally struggle with accepting to take opportunities to do public speaking. So 2 weeks ago, my mentor in the bank where I work was leaving the bank. So we were asked to throw a virtual farewell party for her. And I got asked to speak on behalf of all the young girls that she's mentored in the bank. And to be honest, I was really scared, especially because when we talk about telling your story in the corporate world, we've been told so many times in the boardroom that you need to state facts, be straight to the point, and they sometimes make us feel that we cannot bring the human element to the way we communicate. But I guess through speaking about it with my husband, he was like, no, accept it. You're going to speak at Bishnin's farewell, and why remove that human element to it? Tell your story with her. So what I did during that farewell was trying to balance about, yes, speaking about the accomplishment, so which was the very logical, and explain the difference between the mentorship that she was giving us, how she was also a sponsor, the difference between a sponsor and a mentor. But I also took that opportunity to speak about my personal story with her, like all those hours we spent at her house, in the parking at ABSA, crying in her car, and all of that made me have such a great relationship with her. I would like to think that I ended up doing well, because a lot of people congratulated me about it, but I thought it was important for me to share about that. Sometimes we fear it, but actually opening up about our personal story ends up being what touches and on the emotional part of our audience. So now, going into the principles that we learn, right? So there's a 15-minute video that we ask both the mentees and the mentors to watch prior to the Art of Communication session. It's a very short video, but very, very impactful. So the professor from Harvard, Tim McCarthy is his name, goes through 4 key principles for the Art of Communication. The first one is know your audience. So who are you talking to, really? Do you need to sometimes elevate the way you're talking, the language you're using, or sometimes you need to dumb it down a little bit? Let's say if you're speaking to a younger audience and you're explaining very simple principles to them. And remembering that really at the core of communication is relationships. So how are you going to create that relationship and that bond with your audience? And in order to illustrate that, because again, I think Rita mentioned it a couple of times, in Girls for Girls, we are strong believers in not just imparting the knowledge, but doing the practical side, right? So in order to illustrate knowing your audience, I just want to ask someone to volunteer again. Sorry, I'm trying to make it a bit more participative. Let's consider a scenario where you're in the elevator, you meet Michelle Obama. I think a lot of people mentioned Michelle Obama in the chat, right? You meet Michelle Obama and you have 1 or 2 minutes to convince her to be the next guest speaker at Girls for Girls. What would you tell her? Anyone can volunteer? One of the new mentor, please.
Hello.
Hello, Chesa.
Yes, this is exactly what I would tell Michelle Obama. Hi, Michelle. You inspire a lot of women. You inspire a lot of girls, and a lot of people look up to you. And it will be a dream come true for them to at least spend a few hours with you and hear the world from your perspective. Please grant them their biggest dream.
Amazing. Thank you, Chesa.
That's
Thank
nice.
you so much for that. Did you see how she spoke about how personally she's inspired by Michelle Obama and she's wanting Michelle Obama to come and inspire the girls? But I'm pretty sure the conversation would be quite different if now, this time the scenario would be about you going into a boardroom and trying to convince a group of high executive, mainly male, to come and invest and sponsor Girls for Girls. The approach or what you would tell them wouldn't be necessarily about how they inspire you, right? It would be about how them investing in Girls for Girls would increase the visibility of women leaders in the organization. It would be about equality. It would be how the impact of Girls for Girls could ultimately drive higher productivity in the company. Do you see how I've used completely different elements than what Chiesa just spoke about? So this is what we mean about knowing who your audience is. The second principle is about know the why behind the what. Again, you might feel like we're repeating ourselves. Natasha mentioned it. She gave us a call to action to reflect on our why of wanting to join Girls for Girls and the commitment that's going to come with it. Rita also reiterated the importance of always knowing the why, right? So all of us this morning have chosen to be involved in Girls for Girls. That's the what. We are going to become mentors in Girls for Girls, but we all have different personal motives around why we decided to become a mentor. Personally, I feel like my story comes in two folds. In the beginning of my journey, let's say up until I was in my late teens, I feel like I was very lonely because I had to move from one country to another based on the war that was happening in my home country, Burundi, right? And me also being the oldest girl in my family, I didn't have necessarily anyone to look up to. So I had to figure things out by myself. But then the second half of my life, when I integrated the professional world, I've always had women lift me, show me the way, and which was a completely different experience from the beginning, right? Rita is one of the women that I consider to be my mentor. I've mentioned about Bishnin, which is the mentor that I had to bid farewell 2 weeks ago, right? But those two sections of my life are the motivation I felt like I needed to also give back, so that other girls don't also feel like they don't have anyone to look up to the way I felt growing up, to also giving back to all the experiences I've been getting from the knowledge that I've been getting from those women in my professional journey. So that is my why, and that's the motivation that makes me come over and over again towards Girls for Girls. There's not a single time Rita is going to ask me anything about Girls for Girls that I would say no, because that's my motivation. She did it for me, many women did it for me, so I need to constantly be giving back in that sense. Now the third principle, which is tell your story. Again, we're repeating ourselves. The whole Girls for Girls program is built on the fact that we learn through sharing our stories and learning from other people's stories. This is really the pillar. For me, that's the biggest. If we would all walk away tomorrow from Girls for Girls, we've learned one thing, that we need to tell our story. And what's important about it, it's not about us telling our entire life story, right? I didn't start from the day I was born, where I was born, and escalated to how I landed in South Africa, right? It's about picking the pieces of your story that is relevant to that audience, to that context, to that moment that you're sharing with your audience. So I've picked specifically moments of my story that could illustrate why I got involved in Goals for Girls. And really, when we speak about this third principle and the importance of it, it's always that moment where we then start to tap into the emotional side of people. And remember, people will always, it's not about what you do for people, but there's a famous quote about how people will remember how you made them feel. So how you made them feel, this is the part. Tell your story. You touch them through that. And it's also always about striking that balance between, again, saying those facts, being short, concise, but then balancing it with telling elements of your story. The last principle is call to action. And really about the call to action, ladies, is unfortunately oftentimes you'll have someone who will come, such a great speaker, he's clear, he's persuasive, he or she is inspirational, and you are living that moment, right? And all of a sudden they leave us before that call to action, that request for us to think about something, for us to do something. So this is an important skills about effective communication, is always to leave your audience with that call for action. And on that point, I wanted to share with you guys something that's been bothering my mind really this week, is the fact that we've all seen the Black Lives Matter movement lately. It's all over the news, and the story of George Floyd really got all of us wanting to stand up and go and protest and march, and it's been happening all over the world, despite the fact that the actual crime took place in the US. But lately I've been battling to understand how we as women also are not as vocal about gender-based violence, for example. If you look at the context here today in South Africa, gender-based violence is I feel like it's our pandemic, right, in this country. But it hasn't made the rounds the same way we've seen the Black Lives Matter movement, right? So if my call to action to you ladies is really to start using that communication skill that we speak about in Goals for Girls to fight that gender-based violence, to fight that discrimination. I mean, this morning when I woke up, I was on Facebook and I saw on actually Natasha Ali's mother, Cynthia Ali, shared an article this morning on her page, and the title really shocked me. It said, over 5,000 gender-based violence cases were reported in Gauteng between March and April. Guys, I mean, this number was so shocking for me that this should be for me another cause why all of us as women should be marching all over the world. So that's really my call to action today for you. Before I close out the session quickly, because I think I did spend a lot of time on the 4 key principles, but that was important. I'm just going to close it out. I'm going to project how we run the session. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Just confirm when you can see my screen. Perfect. Yes. Okay, great. So yes. One important element, again, of Goals for Girls is balancing knowledge with practical. So this session on art of communication, we usually start the session with a role play. That's a first section where you said the plenary, we usually do a role play where and the role playing topic will vary depending on us knowing the audience. So for example, I'm the coordinator for the Athlone Girls High School, and a topic that we felt was important for age in grade 10 and 11 was for them to practice interviewing for a bursary. So we were fortunate enough that Hélène Fodo, who's also on this call today, was interviewing the girls. And what we did is we portrayed a good interview and a bad interview. And that allows the girls to practice those art of communication principles that we've discussed. We even asked them after the different 2 role play to say why they felt the first one went right and why the second one went wrong. Then we go into the circle, and that's where we then start unpacking those 4 principles that I've discussed today. And finally, when we come back in the plenary, we usually finish the art of communication with, so in Girls for Girls, we usually give assignments to the girls at the end of the session. So at the end of the Courageous Leadership session, which Rita presented, the assignment the girls had was to go back and prepare a 2-minute speech on a topic of interest. So this is when then in session 3 on art of communication, where they get the opportunity to come and present that speech while applying those principles. But really, we don't force any girls. I think Natasha went over that. It's not about forcing them. We encourage them to volunteer. And so basically that's it for me. That's how we run the art of communication session. Let me just unshare.
Done, Steffi.
Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Steffi. That was amazing. Thank you so much. Very proud of you. Well done. I know you were very nervous and you were absolutely wonderful. So a big round of applause to you.
Well done, Steffi.
Well done. Yeah.
Ladies, I want to do a very quick and wonderful welcome to one of our founding members of Girls for Girls, Ellen joined. She's sneaked into the call. So please give her a big friendly welcome. It's so lovely to have you with us. Thank you for joining. We want to say some words, Ellen.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I mean, like, I was telling Rita there's a hurricane here, and she's like, no, it's a G4G hurricane. I'm really excited. First of all, seeing Steffi speak. Steffi, I'm so proud of you. Oh my goodness, you're like, boom, boom, with clarity and poise and passion. So I want to just say a big hi to everyone, like, hi. I've had 3 sessions today. I've been with Uganda. There was a group. Uganda has like 5 cohorts running today. It's just amazing. It's on fire. So I met a group in the morning and spoke on courageous leadership. Then I've just been with a group of young Kenyans right now graduating. Somehow everything came together. They're finishing X, so I spoke to them, and then I'm so happy to just join you. I wanted to sit in the background, but Rita knows me. I'm like, bah, bah, boom. I'm like there in your face. So she said, Ellen, I have to give you 1 minute to speak. So I'm really appreciative of this. But I just want to say thank you so much, mentors. Thank you for stepping up to the call. Thank you for coming out. I mean, Steffi has made a call for all these young women who are sexually harassed, who are undergoing a lot of sexual violence. And South Africa is not unique, by the way. The situation is across the region. It's just that in South Africa, it's often loud and violent. We've just been talking to the lady in the Kenyan cohort. The guest speaker shared her own story as a young teacher of being sexually harassed until she had to leave the job. But she went into mental depression for some time. And she was saying she was the first person to complain in the whole of Kenyan teaching service vocally about this kind of thing. So you can imagine the damage that our young women are going through. So I'm so grateful and so thankful that you've heeded the call and that you're here to support girls find their voice, use their voice, take courage, speak out, and just change their little worlds. The other day I was watching your video from your training in January and actually cried. I saw it on LinkedIn, where we had the girls from UJ, University of Joburg, now mentoring. I had to write to Rita. I remember those girls starting last year with you know, their eyes were bright, but there was also fear.
We lost
Alan, we've lost you. Alan?
I think the Uganda network. She talked about the fact that there's a hurricane blowing at home. Huh?
It's so dramatic. A whole hurricane. That's crazy.
I was joking. I was saying even a G4G hurricane.
I also thought you meant the G4G hurricane. And then we've lost you.
Okay, so maybe I'll keep monitoring. Let me tell her when she comes back. We'll whatever. Okay.
It's so wonderful to have Alan on any session because the energy and the bounce and the love and everything just comes straight through. So thank you for that beautiful contribution and for joining us today.
Valerie, just one thing I wanted to stress coming out of art of communication is that, again, I always look for what are the big success factors. So the big success factor coming out of art of communication that Steffi has delivered so well is hearing the voices of the girls, especially those that have been the quiet ones sitting in the circle. It is always important that we begin to hear their voices, and it always flips. After art of communication, we actually start hearing more, we should start hearing more from the mentees than from the mentors. So that's just something to keep at the back of your mind, that once you have gone through the skills empowerment of art of communication, we really need to be creating more space in every subsequent session for us to hear more from the girls than we're hearing more from the than the mentors. So it's something to keep at the back of your mind. Okay, Alan, are you back?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm back. It's really a hurricane and it's so bad. I live by the lake and it's so bad. It's like so scary. So all the power blacked out. But I was just concluding to say, yes, as Rita, you've said, the girls' voices matter. As mentors, we are there to support them to find their voice and to use their voice. And so help them, encourage them to write and to speak. Because for such a long time, our voices are muted. So thank you. Be blessed. Keep giving. I'm so excited. I'm seeing people like Elaine, who I met in Rita's dining table last year, and now you can imagine where we are now. I'm seeing Mabatho, who has recently joined, but is like a powerhouse. I am so excited about G4G South Africa. I'm excited about G4G Zimbabwe. Thank you, South Africa, for holding Zimbabwe's hand. I really, really appreciate. And Zimbabwe, we can't wait for you to. Audrey, you're an amazing young woman. I can't wait for you to drive Zimbabwe to another level. So thank you, mentors. Thank you for giving. Let me tell you, it's a blessing. It comes back 100-fold. I think you all know. Elaine, I'm surprised to still see you here. You're like going strong because every time I sit in these circles, I just get so enthused to go back and try and save the world in so many ways. So thank you so much. Thank you, Rita, and thank you, all of you.
Thank you so much, Alan. So lovely to have you here. All right, our next session, ladies, we're going to move straight into it, is session 4, and that is on negotiation, the art of advocating for yourself and others. And to talk to us through this session is Mabatu. Thank you, Mabatu. Go ahead.
Thank you, Val. Thank you so much. So I want to kickstart this piece of our Learning Together by asking us all to do a very quick reflection. And I want you to ponder on these words as a reflection. Develop enough courage so that you can stand up for yourself and then stand up for somebody else. Develop enough courage so that you can stand up for yourself and then stand up for somebody else. These are the words of Maya Angelou. We all know her, a powerful speaker, writer, poet, a woman's woman. This is both a reflection and an invitation to all of us. The session on negotiation, I think, is beautifully captured in that very quote by Maya Angelou, because it is about standing up for yourself and advocating on behalf of others. It is an intense session. It is potentially an intimidating session. I think for many of us, the minute we hear the word negotiation, we think, oh my gosh, I don't have the skills, I don't have the know-how, I'm a small little person. what on earth am I trying to do, thinking that I can negotiate my way through anything? What is incredibly important with this particular session is really to drive home the point that we are always negotiating on a daily basis. All of us, in some way or another, are negotiating for something. So even with that, what I would like you to do, just even in the chat box, ladies, is this. Give us one example of a time when you have negotiated for something successfully. So just a quick summary, it could be, for argument's sake, a promotion or a raise at work, whatever your own example is. When I did the session, I think last week or the week before, with the cohort to which I belong, I gave the very simple example of, and it was kind of bringing in my own story, which is, even as I sit in these sessions with Girls for Girls on a Saturday, taking a few hours of time to be with this wonderful circle of women and to uplift the mentees that we work with, I don't just jump into it. I have to negotiate for time with my family, because being part of the circle means something else in my life has to park. There is some chore, some responsibility that I have to put on the side while I focus fully on this work. It means that I have to speak to my husband, I have to speak to my children and say, I need 4 hours to do this. Whatever else I might have needed to do, can we look at a different time in which we can do it? That is a negotiation. So importantly with this session is to normalize the idea that the mentees, that the girls are stepping daily into some kind of negotiation. As with all the other sessions, and I know Steffi said, you know, we're repeating this, but it is incredibly important that we are repetitive in why we are doing this work. So very similarly to the other sessions, the first question we need to ask ourselves as mentors and as mentees is, why are we negotiating to begin with? So the objective is quite important. What is the point? The title of the session captures it. It is about advocacy. In other words, it is about speaking up for myself, but it is also speaking on behalf of others. The intention has to be very clear. Whether we are talking about what I want to lead with courage, whether we are talking about what I want to communicate, without intention, you don't know what action needs to follow. So intention, why am I doing this? Is what actually informs action. What do I need to do? And those two elements combined ultimately is how the girls are going to see impact in those things they want to change, or those parts of their lives, their communities, etc., that they want to impact. So intention and action is what's going to lead to the impact they want to achieve. So revisiting over and over again the why behind your what is incredibly important. Negotiation is not purely for its own sake. The intention is to achieve some kind of outcome at the end. But for us to achieve the outcome at the end, we have to be very clear on the purpose and what informs our desire to want to make that shift, and then come up with the actions that are necessary to realize the shift we want to make. So that is the why. That is the first step to the process of negotiation. The second aspect of how we then look at running this, this session is then saying, now that I know the objective, now that I'm clear on why I want to negotiate in the first place, how do I do it? What are the tools that are there to enable me to run or to move through a negotiation process as successfully as possible? Now, herein is where the video that the girls get to watch is very important. There is a video like the others that they have as part of this program. It is offered by one of the professors at Harvard Kennedy School of Public Leadership. And it is a Professor Keely Hong. I hope I got her name right. But she does very powerfully and very simply, and this is the thing about negotiation, we need to show its importance, but not overwhelm people with too much technicality. What Professor Hong has been able to do beautifully is she's come up with a very simple and very easy to remember framework. It is the YOU framework, like the word you. In other words, you or me, right? If you were talking about me, YOU. And the framework is in essence an acronym. So the Y is yourself. So what Professor Hong says to her audience, to us listening as mentors and mentees, is before you step into a negotiation process, understand yourself. Self-awareness is incredibly important and critical in this instance. What do you stand for? What are the things, and particularly I should use the word strengths and not just things. What are the strengths that you are bringing into play as you go into negotiate with whoever it might be? What she doesn't speak of necessarily in the video, but what I think is also significant in asking the mentees to think about is, what are the experiences that I'm bringing into the negotiation? What are the biases? In other words, the beliefs I have about myself and about others. What might even be the prejudices and the stories I've told myself, the narratives I've created about myself and about others as I step into the negotiation. It's important to think about that, because whatever story may be at the back of my mind is the story that is going to show up as I try to negotiate. So for example, if I am hanging on as a girl, as a woman even, to the idea that women are soft, women are overly emotional, you know, women don't really understand technical things. Women ... whatever the stories are that I have been told, that society continues to tell, and that I have believed about myself, these stories are going to show up as I engage with somebody else. Therefore, if I think as a woman, I don't have a place in leadership, I am going to come into negotiation from a position of weakness. And so when we ask the girls to look at that why as the first point of reference, it is really for you to press in on, to emphasize that they are coming in actually from a place of strength, that in fact, they have negotiated something before. What I think is also important in that part is, and also as part of just kind of saying, we need to make negotiation something friendly, something not intimidating at all, is getting the girls to think about everyday examples. So very much like I did with you here, and I said, share some of the things that, you know, experiences you've had, and I'm going to quickly look at some of them. So Natasha, for example, is sharing about a negotiation she had with a big pharmaceutical to give thousands of sanitary towels for young girls. And that's quite a big one and an important one. Lynette talks about convincing their accountant at work to increase their travel allowance. And who's that? Munasha is saying, you know, she's an HR advocate, and she got a chance to negotiate with university chancellors to put their issues on the tertiary agenda. So these are very, I think, very useful examples, and for me, very realistic examples in terms of the areas in which of these three ladies whose examples I'm using are quite useful. What is also, I think, very useful on the flip side is ask the girls about very simple things. So in the one session that we had, one of the mentees shared about negotiating for the remote control of, you know, of their TV at home. Now you might think, what? A TV? Come on, that's a silly thing. It's not about the TV. It wasn't about that. She gave for her, I mean, she's, I think, one of the youngest in the group. She's about 15 or so. So she's not yet at a point where she's negotiating at a university or negotiating in a work environment. But in her reality, in her home environment, they have one television set and many members of the family. Everybody wants to watch different things at different times. And so rather than fight, they try and find ways. She was a little bit sneaky. She said she sometimes puts away the remote or hides the remote, which was a bit of a funny thing to share. But the idea was she recognized that, oh, when I ask for when my turn is for me to watch TV or when my brother can have it, that's a negotiation. So that aha moment to go, do you see that negotiation isn't a big word merely limited to the confines of tertiary institutions and boardrooms, you know, where people work. So find ways that you can say to the mentees, this is something that you do on a day-to-day basis. So that is the first part of Professor Hong's framework of YOU. Yourself, what do you hope to achieve? I think that is also a critical question. What do you hope to achieve? In other words, there's some kind of outcome that you are hoping for out of the negotiation process itself. Note that I keep using the word process, because very often negotiation is not a once-off conversation. Sometimes it may take multiple conversations for somebody to get to the outcome that they desire. Also, process implies it is a back and forth, a give and take. I like using the word, it is a dance. If I'm negotiating with Val, for argument's sake, she and I are doing a dance. I get to put my points on the table, and then I get to listen. I get to see and to hear what it is that Val might be afraid of as I ask for whatever I'm asking for. What is it that Val herself wants out of the negotiation that we're having? And then it comes back to me, and then it goes back to her. And sometimes we leave the first conversation without necessarily having come to an agreement, and we may have to revisit it at another point. And so I use the word process very deliberately. Right, that is the Y of the framework, YOU. The second part of it stands for others. So the O stands for others. And in this particular element of the framework, listening is a big takeaway. It is not just standing for myself and what I want. Remember what we're saying about this entire program. G4G says we empower girls for leadership. Leadership is leading self, for sure, but it means my own leadership is a conversation I'm always having with other people that says, come with me. Follow me because I have a cause that I want you to be a part of. But if I'm asking people to come with me, how can I do that if I don't listen? So even within a negotiation process, I have to be listening. I listen with my ears, but I listen with my eyes. What are their bodies telling me that their words are not? And of course, I'm listening with my heart. I come into the process open-hearted, open-minded, because this is not just about me. So what is it that I'm advocating for? Let's use the girls as an example. Maybe let me borrow Natasha's example as as a powerful one. So Natasha negotiated with a pharmaceutical, for sanitary towels to be donated to specific places. Now, if I come in as an advocate for somebody else and I look at a school, for argument's sake, and I go, we've noticed that girls miss a lot more days of school than boys do. I know because, I'm a woman, I'm a leader, I know these things. It probably means that the girls just need new uniforms. And the girls just need, what do they need? Maybe they need vitamins because, girls are perhaps just weaker than boys. Do you see how those are assumptions? I have not listened to anybody. I have not asked any questions. But if I spoke to the girls, to the people concerned and said, young women, why is it that so many of you miss school more regularly than boys do? They would then have told me, well, as young girls, we menstruate, but we don't have sanitary towels. And so I would rather not come to school and embarrass myself. I stay at home until that time or those few days have passed and I can come back. Now, you realize that if I had not asked, if I had not listened, I would have made assumptions about what they need. So part of advocating for others is not just driving your own agenda, is listening for what they need and what they need to get out of the process.
Gosh,
what are their fears?
It's like you were there. It's like you were in my conversation. Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
It is about understanding what it is others need, what are their own fears, what are their own desires, and so on. And then the last element of the U framework is understanding. How well do we understand others? Can you listen for what they care for? So it's building upon the O in the YOU. What I want to add for us to look out for, which is not necessarily again in Professor Hong's talk, is two things that are important in a negotiation process. Context is everything. Representation is also key. What do I mean by that? If we are going to be talking to mentees in a particular, and we all come from different backgrounds, I think, as somebody has said. So for example, for us, and when I say us, I'm talking about the cohort to which I belong. It is a very specific community where there are very particular social challenges. You know, drugs are quite a big issue for the community in which the girls at THMC live and go to school. And so if I come in as a mentor and give examples of negotiating, I don't know, negotiating for PlayStation and things to play with and toys and beautiful, it means nothing, because the things that they have to negotiate for in their context are a different world to what I may be putting on the table. So there has to be an understanding of the context of where the mentees may have to run their own negotiation. Representation is important in that, like the other sessions, what we do in negotiation is there is the option and the possibility to invite a speaker, somebody who's going to inspire them with their own story. Now, if we bring in, and I'm not taking anything away, because as women and girls, we can always learn from others wherever we are in the world. But if I bring in, and I'm going to pick on Hillary Clinton as an example, because I think she was such fire and such a wonderful example of what galvanized this very movement of Girls for Girls. So no doubt her story is one we can all hang on to and learn from. But if I'm talking to a group of girls who are struggling with, how do I negotiate with my parents in a home where there's abuse, or a community where drugs are an issue, or where as a young person I don't feel listened to, it would make sense to bring in somebody who speaks to that context, who represents that. So at THMC, we brought in a young person who, while she didn't have big social, issues from where she came in terms of, her home, she comes from a stable home, a very supportive home, but she was a young person speaking to young people. She spoke about her own doubts and her own fears. She spoke about an initiative she wanted to bring to life because of things that were happening at school. The girls were enthralled. The girls, she had them kind of eating out of the palm of her hand because she represented what they stood for. So when you think of others, and particularly from that angle, bringing in somebody who is going to inspire and to motivate the girls, wherever possible, think of what is the context and how do we make sure we bring in some kind of representation into that. Right, so from, I looked at why we're doing the negotiation, how we do it. Now, what do we do to make sure that it comes to life? Again, this program, I think, is designed to be practical. We're not just talking theory here. And so in the mentoring session itself, what we did then was when we broke out into our respective smaller circles, we gave each group the opportunity to practice, to bring in fact, some of what had already been learned. What did they learn in the art of communication that they could bring into a negotiation process with someone? So one option is perhaps to do a role play. Ask the smaller group to do a role play and ask people to think of scenarios. Ask the mentees themselves, what is a scenario you want us to think about? Some people will say, oh, I need to have a tough conversation with my mother. Let that be a role play because it's real for them. Or you can look at a case. People might not be comfortable to kind of put on a role and have a dialogue. So in the little circle that I was in, we said, give us a case. So by case is, give us an example. One of the young women said, oh, I want to take part in a music singing competition. My family won't let me. And then the circle became a circle of coaches. And so even the other mentees were actually peer coaching this one mentee. So find ways in which you can make the work quite practical. so that the girls can see that not only am I able to think of my own scenario and pick up on my own strengths and then, you know, advocate for myself, but I can actually coach somebody in what they need to think about. So that's the YOU framework, that's the practical. The one thing is, and I'm mindful that my time is pretty much up, but I have to look at this particular part of it because we said there has to be an outcome. The negotiation is hopefully one that is not winner takes all. The point is, I want to benefit something as I'm negotiating, but I understand that there are certain obligations I need to fulfill. So I am taking something, but I have to give something. What we ask mentors, especially with this one, is for the girls to think about, what am I not willing to give? That I want something and I want it badly enough does not mean I am going to all out compromise everything. So there is the alternative, there is always the option of walking out. No deal is an outcome in itself. If I am asked to sacrifice my values, if I am asked in some way to harm my person, if I am asked to do something that is unethical, potentially even illegal, I can walk away from this process because it's not serving the best interest of what I'm trying to achieve. So my values in everything, and we're going to do values and ethics with Elaine later, have to be what informs part of what I take out of that negotiation process. Right, Val, I'm going to leave it there. I think I've said quite a mouthful, but I think this for me is every element of the program is important, but within negotiation and advocacy for self and for others, herein again, the mentees get a wonderful opportunity to say, where in my life, at school, at work, at university, etc., do I have the opportunity to step up? Even if, I always use the phrase, even if your knees are knocking against each other, step up and stand up for something in which you truly believe, because it is for the greater good of everyone that you are serving. Thank you, Val. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much, Mbatu. I appreciate that. Right, now ladies, I'd like you to all please stand up. You've been sitting for too long. It's time to get you moving. So please, let's get out of those chairs. I want you to shake around, shake and jump a little bit. Stretch your arms. Just get your blood flowing in this freezing cold. And then when you're ready, we can sit down again. It's been a long session, but we're nearly there. And I know that everyone has said to you that their session is the most important. But actually, we're now really getting into what G4G is all about. So the last two sessions that we're going to go through, I'm going to cover one, and then Elaine will cover the last. Session 5 is actually called Public Service and Running for Office. But don't let that description lead you astray, because it's not about public service. Public service has got that context about what running for office in government or some sort of position, senior position in government. But actually, we like to sort of rename this leadership and service. And this is now the culmination of all the sessions to date. So you had the building trust, you had your courageous leadership, you had your art of communication, and finally, negotiation. And all of those 4 sessions are preparing you for this session now. Leadership and service. What you want to come out of this session is that you want the girls to start thinking about how they are going to bring value, how they are going to step up and take their leadership role in whatever context they want to take it. Now, when we talk about leadership, it's so important to think about where the leadership actually is. When are we leaders? If you think about today, at some point in today, or yesterday, or this last week, you have taken leadership in something. And I would like you to type in the chat an example of some time in this week when you did some sort of service where you committed and gave some sort of leadership of sorts, either in your community, in your church, at work, wherever it may be. Please, if you wouldn't, type in where you've given some sort of leadership at work or wherever. I'll wait for you guys to respond. You can just type that in there. So what's very important about this session is when you're talking to the girls, it's really about making it clear to them that it doesn't have to be leadership in the context of being a CEO or being in government. They need to find their leadership examples in their environments. For example, the girls in high school, for them it could be being a prefect, it could be being a class monitor. For the students, it could be leading the hostel or being one of the project leaders in an assignment. It could be being a team, the captain of a sports team. There are so many examples of where this could play out. So I loved in one of our sessions recently for the global session, one of the ladies said, my corner office. Your corner office could be anywhere. And I think it's about deciding where your corner office is. It could be the corner office of your home, where you are the mom and you are helping out your family and playing a leadership role within your family. I love when Bartu says, I lead in my home, my circle of friends, business associates, at work, in church, and in the community. You take on a leadership role in so many ways when you don't even realize that you're doing it. And this session is about enabling the girls to find when they are doing that, when they are actually creating an environment where they can make an impact and give back in some way. And if it's like with Steffi's call to action, if it's in some way taking a stand on women violence, then that is what it may be. We had an interesting session with one of the mentees last year, where the girl was saying, no, she doesn't like politics, she's not interested in politics at all, but she's really a climate change advocate. She really wants to fight for the climate. And we both, Rita and I both said to her, well then, if you are interested in fighting climate, what you need to do is make sure that you are interested in politics and you use politics as a way to try and help you achieve what you want to achieve. And one of the things that comes out of negotiation is that what we ask the girls in negotiation, what do they need to shift? What needs to change in their lives to help them overcome obstacles? And public service or this session is about what do they need to shift to help them find their purpose and what they're interested in actually advocating for. So it's almost once again, it's driving the why behind the what, where they want to go, what they want to be. And if the girls can then start questioning themselves in terms of finding their purpose or where they want to go, it also gives them a way to find out what they're good at. Now, the video that is shown for this session is given by Steve Jardine from Harvard. And he talks about various things. And one of the most important things he talks about is how women are judged differently. And women always have to show up differently because they are judged differently. He gives an example, or someone gave an example of someone wearing this. Men can wear the same shirt day after day after day, whereas women always have to wear something different because they are judged in that way. And as such, women always have to present themselves and appear stronger. But actually, what it comes down to is not appearing stronger, but being yourself and being authentic within yourself. And in that way, you actually can present yourself and bring to the table what you need to bring to the table. I loved what Angela Wanena said in one of our other sessions, where she said, I just want to read it. If you're not sitting at the table, you are on the menu. And I thought that was such a powerful way of sort of talking about, you've got to bring something to the table. You've got to bring the skills to the table. And that's what this is about. It's about showing the girls how to do that. What are they bringing to the table? What is it that they're actually going to be able to advocate for or talk about or be clear about? And that's part of the skills that they've learned in communication. The other thing that he also talks about, Steve Jardine, is he talks about how they are, what people look at when they're speaking. I had an interesting session recently online, and someone said to me, you know, Val, I could see that you were completely not engaged. Your body language was just, your arms were crossed, you were not interested at all in what the people were saying. And you see, that's what it's all about. When we are communicating, he talks about how 55% of the time it's about your body language and what you are actually showing people. He gave a percentage of 38% is about your voice. Are you using inflection? Are you using tone? Is your voice going up? Is your voice going down when you're talking? Are you engaging people? And then when it came to it, was only 7% of what you were actually saying. It's how are you actually engaging people? How are you keeping people interested in what you are talking about? And can people trust what you're saying? By whether you're using your hands, whether you're smiling, whether you're laughing, whatever it may be. I might be talking to you now, but if I'm talking to you like this, honestly, are you going to be interested or not? No, you're not. And so he talks about those specific things as well. And it's an easy way to give the girls role plays or examples. So this session is also very much about letting the girls, giving them an opportunity to show what they are doing, either through a role play, interviewing for a job, or trying to do a negotiation in some way that is going to impact their leadership principles. So try and keep your circles very interactive in that way, letting girls show or ask them to query what they want, what they're interested in advocating for. Then the other thing that he talks about is not letting your perfume or your clothes arrive before what you're saying. I mean, I'm sure one of you at some stage have got into a lift with somebody where their perfume was so overpowering you actually wanted to get out of the lift because you couldn't breathe. And that's the same thing, helping people be authentic, but also be real in terms of what message they want to convey, and trying to be clear to the girls about being appropriate in settings. If you want to go for a job interview, dress appropriately. Or if you're standing in front of a board and you want the board to take you seriously, dressing casually or wearing way out earrings or whatever may not be what's gonna get people to take you seriously. So he also talks about that in terms of being key principles. And then one of the things that I love the most, and this is a story that Rita also tells that's always stayed with me, and this is what I love about G4G, is the stories that stay with you. She always talks about being in a meeting, and quite an important meeting, and one of the men asked her to make some coffee. I think it was Rita. Is that what it was? Yeah. And she was one of the most senior people at the table, if not the most senior, and they just assumed that she would make the coffee because she was the woman sitting in the room. And so what Steve says is, don't ever let anyone, patronize you. Call them out. Immediately call them out, which is exactly what Rita did. And he's very clear about standing for yourself, standing up for yourself, and making sure that when someone doesn't treat you well, that you call them out on it. And in fact, Elaine is going to go into that more when she talks about the principles of ethics in the next session. So this session, as I said, is very service oriented in terms of trying to get the girls to think about what they want to advocate for. And I think if the session has been successful, when you get the girls to start questioning what they want to do, where they want to go, when they start engaging with you in terms of how can I use the network, where can I gain skills, who should I speak to about this? I feel really strongly about this. When you get that sort of interaction in the circles, you know that you're succeeding and you know that you're getting the kind of outcomes that you want. It's definitely about getting the girls to start thinking, engaging them more, because now you're getting towards the end of the cohorts, and so they now want to start demonstrating that everything they've done to date has been beneficial. It's so important. It's to me, it's the most important one. As I said, we all fight for our sessions, and I love how passionate everyone is about their topics. And then just the things to be wary or careful of is making sure that, once again, as we stated previously, is that this is now when the girls must definitely be using their voices more. The mentors are now taking a backseat completely. You're now letting the girls step up and call each other and query and ask each other, because they're all finding their feet, and it's about letting them talk to each other about what the discussion is about. And you are now only facilitating the conversation. There's very little that you can say other than to keep probing with questions. That is the only thing that you should be doing as a mentor at this stage. And then also, like, it's a lovely way of getting girls engaged in various projects and making sure that in some way, when we talk about service, we talk about service to the community, not only on women's rights or things that are helping facilitate women's rights, but also talking about where they can serve in the community and how important that is in terms of driving your personal agenda and growing yours and finding ways to grow your own personal skills. And I think that's about it. I don't know if
Valerie, can I just, I wanted to share the example of what happened at UJ at this point. So we had Confidence, who in the beginning was one of the quieter girls. Okay, she always kept on saying she comes, I think, from Limpopo. She was very, very quiet in the beginning. Suddenly we saw her begin to emerge. And then Confidence shared that she had a project. When we challenged, you know, what does it mean to be a courageous leader? She came back to the group and she said she had noticed that some of the students were forced to go home because they didn't have food. So what she decided to do was to put together like a mini NGO within their residence. And she asked the mentors, I remember she asked Nuska Zwane for food. So she mobilized the food. So there was a courageous leader stepping up. When we heard about Confidence's story, we then did the spotlight, which is covered under negotiations. When Mabati talked about you know, negotiating from a point of strength, one of the things we do sometimes is we ask the girls to tell each other what we think we admire about them. So we shone a spotlight on her. So we got Confidence to actually write up on her initiative. And we shared that story at this point to show that running for office, this session, is not only about politics, that your personal agenda as a leader, she had now chosen to protect and safeguard her students. She was a student leader, but rather than just saying, hey, people don't have food, she stepped up and she mobilized the food. So I felt that at that point we had a beautiful coming together, because here was courageous leadership in action. Here were the mentors coming in to support her. And then we did the spotlight story. But she demonstrated so well for us what session 5 is about. It's a leader taking action in service for her people. And I think it's a story that we tend to share. It's documented. It was actually shared on the G4G website. And I wanted to just make sure that that's in practice. Keep your eye out for those girls who are beginning to emerge. And Taviseng was beginning to put together a group that was going to go to an orphan center and help look after the babies. Shine those spotlights, because what we're doing is we are empowering the girls, which is what we want to do. And we're translating these sometimes seemingly complex concepts. We're showing them, but you already do it. Our job is to rally behind you and to support you. I just wanted to share that story. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rita. And I guess that's the key thing, is like making sure that the girls are feeling empowered and making sure that they are being themselves and being empowered. It's about what they want to bring to the table and about how they can enable themselves. And yeah, that's it from me. I'm now going to hand over to Elaine, and Elaine is going to take us through the very important section on ethics.
Hi everyone, good morning.
Morning.
It's always difficult to be the last one on the menu, but yay, we've got to make it interesting, hopefully. Now, why ethics and values? Ethics and values are very important because they are actually the cornerstone of everything that we have done so far. Whether you are looking at building trust, whether you are communicating, whether you are running for leadership, whether you are negotiating, whether you are, you know, whatever you do in terms of all the things that we've learned today, you have to underpin that, and it will be underpinned by ethics and values. Now, what are ethics and values for so that we all come from a good understanding of what this is? Ethics and values serve as a guide to moral daily living and help us judge whether our behavior can be justified. They are principles and ideals which help us in making the judgment of what is more important. Right? Are we there?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
So the overview of this session basically is to focus on examining moral choices that we have to make and the values and principles that inform the decisions we take on a daily basis. This can be in any setting, whether at home, in the community, it could be societal, it could be organizational, it could be in any setting. So the session is based on Professor Robichaud's framework, which is in a video that everybody has to view before we come into the session for preparation. So basically, it talks about the key principles of the fact that ethics and values are the bedrock of everything that we do. It is important always, and we must remind the girls as we take them through this session, that they have to have a value system that will inform them and give them the confidence in order to make decisions in a challenging environment. So basically, when they're faced with ethical dilemmas, they must always know that there are options. And Professor Robichaud also talks about the fact that it is sometimes always useful to stand back and look at the situation from a different angle, or even ask other people who don't always agree with you to help you with making a decision. You may not necessarily take what they're telling you, but it helps you look at a different option. So in order to illustrate the point, I'm going to call on Mabatu to take us through a scenario that illustrates this point about ethics and values in our daily lives. Mabatu?
Thanks, Elaine. So here's my story, everybody. I'm a single mother of 2 children, and I work for a company where I'm a bookkeeper. I've been with this company for 10 years, and it's not a company that pays us a lot, but it is a stable job. And with things being as they are at home, and all of us with, COVID-19 and things seemingly getting more expensive, I got into a bit of trouble about 2 weeks ago. Purely out of desperation, I took some money out of petty cash. I took 500 Rand because my little one, who is 4 years old, got really, really sick, and I needed to rush her to a private doctor. Now, I don't think I'm going to have the money to put back into petty cash, which is my intention, by the way. I do mean to put the money back. I just don't have it now. I've spoken to my brother, and he said he might help. He's really not in a position right now because he's got his own family to worry about. So my issue here is I've done this thing. I've taken the money. I'm not a bad person. But for the last 2 weeks, I'm just sitting in absolute guilt. I don't know what to do. So Elaine, you're my friend. What should I do? I mean, you know me, you know I'm a good person. What should I do?
Mabatu, I get your point, and I know you're not a bad person, and that you must have been desperate to do what you did. However, yeah. Did you actually look at options before you decided to take the money from the petty cash?
I thought of all sorts of things, Elaine, and really, I in the moment, I did not have a choice. I needed the money. I don't know. I mean, what options do you think I would have had? It was really a pressing, urgent thing I had to do.
Did you even look at going to speak to your HR people to find out if there was a way in which the company could help you?
Elaine, you don't know this company, right? I mean, already the CEO had a big thing with all of us saying that, because of, the sales have dropped, the company is not doing well. Like I said, we're in this pandemic. Customers are not buying from our company as much as they used to. So I can tell you now, this is not a place where I could have just gone. And I work in finance, so I know the situation. Nobody was going to give me a loan up front. That was a definitely, that would have been a non-starter. No one would have given me that loan. Your salary is it, and the company will not help you or give you anything beyond that. So, I mean, what else could I have done?
Mabatu, if you think about it, yes, I understand that the company is in a difficult position. But if you maybe had gone to HR, they still would have looked at an option to help, I think. And also, did you look at other people outside of the organization?
Look, Elaine, you and I had a talk about a month ago, and you were telling me about your own problems. You are my closest friend. How do I come to you and ask you for money when I know you've got your own struggle? My brother, as I said, is already struggling himself with his wife and kids, so I can't ask him. There's no way any bank is going to give me a loan. By the way, I'm already in debt with other things, so there was no way that I could ask for money. I was thinking of, I don't know, I was thinking of confessing, but I know what the repercussions are if I go and tell anyone in human resources, or even my boss. If I tell them what I've done, I'm pretty much out the door. So I don't know,
Are there any possibilities of you confiding in somebody within the organization who
I
is
don't
not
know if I can trust anyone.
Person, who's not necessarily an HR person, but somebody that could be useful in showing you a different way of resolving the issue?
I don't know if I can trust anyone, and HR is always on the side of management. Let me tell you just a little thing, Elaine. One of my colleagues who'd been here about 15 years, also quite desperate, took 2 toilet paper rolls and a small tin of coffee for his family. He was taken through a very embarrassing disciplinary process, and he was fired for toilet roll. What do you think they're going to do with me for taking 500 Rand? You see where I'm stuck, Elaine. I can't confess. And you know, as my friend, that I'm trying to teach my kids the right values, but I'm telling you about this company and how difficult they are. I don't know, maybe we should ask other people to help us, because you're asking me so many questions, Elaine, and I'm just feeling judged right now. Maybe somebody else can help us. I don't know if
the idea, I'm sorry, the idea was not to judge you, but the idea was to make you look at options in which you can perhaps, resolve the issue. The money has been taken, and the issue is, how do you get out of that pickle? Because yes, the money has been taken, but I still believe that there could be people within the organization that can help. But anyway, let's hear what the other people in the room, what other ideas they have in terms of assisting you out of this pickle. Can we have other people in the room help? Mentors?
Help me out here, ladies. I need help. I'm desperate.
Rita says,
Rita's asking me.
Yes. Could
I negotiate it?
No. Could you?
Rita, of course I thought about this. So here's the thing, right? The first time my daughter got sick, I took her to the local clinic, and that, she just got worse. Do you know that even to go there, if you want to see a doctor, if there is even a doctor on the day, you have to queue from 4 in the morning. It is freezing, Rita. What could I have done? I needed to see a private doctor. Our medical aid has run out, so we don't have any more medical insurance. I don't have cash, and there I work for a company where this petty cash was just sitting there. My child needed help, and she needed it immediately. So no, I could not have negotiated with the private doctor, and I was not going to sit in a queue from 4 in the morning to only maybe see a doctor at 2 in the afternoon.
Any other ideas, ladies? Alan says you're caught between a rock and a hard place. Do you have a village?
I know that, Alan, I know, but you've got to help me. I don't have any answers myself. Like I
Did you
said,
go to your
I'm really a
sisters?
decent person, and Elaine knows it.
Did you go
only
to
have my
your
brother
village
and-
in this in this cohort? Did you ask any of the people here if they could help you at that point before you got the money?
Look, I've been embarrassed to ask too many people. I asked Elaine as my closest friend, and Elaine has her own troubles. I mean, we're all struggling during this time. And, you know, for me to just go and tell other people that I'm struggling, I don't want to burden people with my issues, you know?
Any other ideas? So somebody, Matete, says we must confess and commit to paying the money little by little.
I can't confess, Matete. I told you, Bra Elias was fired for 2 toilet rolls and a can of coffee. What do you think they're going to do to me for 500 Rand? Rita says, look for a job.
Rita
and
says,
then
look for a job and confess. Sorry.
Nobody's hiring. Companies are closing down. It's COVID-19.
Natasha says she's with Rita.
I don't know. Elaine, take us out of our misery here. It's a tough one. I don't know, right?
And ladies, the idea here is to show that these issues are not always black and white. And sometimes things happen, and the best of us have to make very difficult decisions. And to say there's a right and a wrong way of looking at this thing would really be naive, because there are circumstances that have caused Maba to go and take the money. But now she's in this situation. And yes, the truth of the matter is the decision that she has taken will have consequences, okay? But it is always important as an individual, when you make a decision, as I said earlier on, to step back, look at the situation again, and consider all angles and see if you can avoid making a particular decision and make another one, which might be a better one. And part of what all of you were doing today is to look at options to say, could she rather have done this or done that or done that? All of those are possibilities. And the idea here and the learning that we were trying to uplift is that there are always options. There is never one way of looking at a decision. And any decision that you take is always informed by your ethics and values. And it is always better not to always choose the easy way out, because the easiest way out might not necessarily be the best one. Are there any questions at this point in terms of these learnings, or anything that somebody wants to uplift?
I just wanted to say, like, in this scenario, really, you find that it's a typical life situation, because now her child's life was at stake. And in as much as we want, like, when everything is normal, it's very easy for us to encourage each other to do things ethically and look for the best way around things. But when you are in the situation, like in this case where your child's life is at stake, it's very, very not always the case for you to be looking for the best next thing to do, like trying to think of who can give me money when you're actually seeing money in front of you and the child is about to die. So you find that when you're helping other people and they're opening up to you, you need to learn not to judge and try to put them in yourself in their shoes in that moment. And then as much as we can't justify the action, then try to see how we can further help each other.
Yes. So in the learning environment, when we are doing the session, it is always good to throw it back at the people for them to uplift the learning. And in the circle, if you have time, we found that in one of the sessions that we ran, the first cohort with UJ, the discussion was so involved that we didn't take it back to the circle, I think. Can somebody correct me? We didn't take it to the circle. It ended in the plenary because there was so much engagement. But if there is an opportunity to take it back into the circle for the girls to then engage with it and talk about perhaps the same example or other examples that they can give, it's always useful. And they need to go through what basically the concepts that are uplifted in the session are. They need to understand the issue before they make the decision. They must understand the issue at a personal, organizational, or societal level. They must examine the strategy and options that are available to them in the light of the values that they already espouse. And they need to evaluate the potential outcomes and successes or failures or call to action in terms of what they're going to be doing. So the guiding questions always, when you are having to make ethical and faced with ethical dilemmas, is to look at what are your guiding values and principles as a leader. Remember, we've been talking about you are now looking at becoming a leader before the session. But you need to have, and you have to understand what are your non-negotiables. What is the line that you are not going to cross? And all of us need to have this, and the mentees need to understand this. Up to what level are you going to take this, and where is the line? What is it that I am not going to do because my values or my ethics inform me accordingly? And yes, the story that we've shared uplifts the complex environment in which we operate when we are faced with ethical dilemmas. And it is not just one right answer or one wrong answer. It is very, very complex. And we need to appreciate that. But yes, when you have values that inform you, it makes the decision a bit more easy, which doesn't mean that it's always going to be the right decision. But if you know that you have had time to reflect on the decision that you have to make, you take into account all, if it's in an organization as an example, as we know, organizations have policies and procedures, and you have to look at those and say, what are the policies and the procedures of this organization? If I take this action, what are the consequences to me, as an example? Or if I do X in the community, what is the community going to, what's the comeback from the community? Is it going to be good for me in the community or for the community itself? Or even in your home, whatever decisions you have to make in the home, what are the repercussions of the decision that you are going to take? So always you have to look at the angles. And then yes, I dare say, in conclusion, which I'm hard pressed to say, but yes, once you've made the decision, you have to live with the decision that you have made. But if the decision you have made is one that is informed strongly by what you believe in, and experience teaches us that sometimes the decisions that we make, even though they were informed by good values, could actually be considered as wrong by other people. But as long as we know within ourselves that the decisions are made based on values that are dear to me, then you are able to even weather the storm when it comes. Are there any questions at this point?
Elaine, I'd like to just add to that. I think to tie it back with the previous sessions, it goes back to village. In your village, remember we said there are different people that you draw things from. So as you go through the framework you have just talked about, understand the issues, examine the strategy, evaluate the potential outcomes. You're not alone. You're not alone. That is what village is for. There are people who will, maybe they're financial people who might have advised you, but there's always probably someone in your village that is your values and ethics accountability partner.
Yes.
All of us know. I think all of us, if you think about it, there's always that person who will hold you accountable. So that if you really think your solution is to put your hand into that kitty and take that 400 rands, call that person in your village. That person will set you straight. So ethics and values, like Elaine says, I think it goes through everything. But I think this is the one point at which that your village really comes into play. It's funny for me, it takes me right back to session number 1 on building trust, because ethics and values, that when you're really tested, on your own, you might not be strong enough. It's always good to have the people around you that might be able to remind you, but you know, Mabatu, you're not that type of person. And then you're able to think through it. So as we talk about ethics and values, we always then take it back, you know, to the earlier starting.
Yes, but Rita, and I agree 100% with you, but remember what Mabatu said. She said, when Alan said, where is your village? Alan actually asked the question. And what did Mabatu say? She said, you know, I've been to the village, you know. I've been to the village and the village wasn't able to help. And also there was a sense of, there was judgment maybe in the village. And sometimes it could be that there is judgment in the village, you know, because so yes, again, that can happen.
Courageous leadership kicks in because everything now kicks in. Because now once again, you remember as a courageous leader, you're able to stand firm for, you know, so for instance, I would have said to Mabatu, I think you know, your mom, or your brother, this is when you go and you say your family, this is what the situation is like. And you know, you can push a little bit harder. So every scenario, the point you've made is there are always options. The question is, how do you evaluate those options? So you can do them on your own, but I think it's very important, especially in this world where sometimes, and we know we're facing it, a lot of young people are doing suicide. Why? Because the world is overwhelming for them. So I think one of the important things is to remind them to say, yes, you have an ethics and value system, apply that system, but don't feel alone. Remember, there are all people that you can come back to and be able to do that.
And one of the most important points is knowing the line. You know, where do I draw the line? Where will I not go to? I am not prepared to go over a particular line. And that is very, very important for all of us to be able to draw a line.
Yeah, can I just come? I mean, I really want to thank the two actresses. They did such an amazing job, and you really re-emphasize the things. It's often a gray area. It's clouded. At that moment, you have a sick kid, you have debts, you don't have where to get the money. It's never clear cut. You're in that position, but deep down, because of the value system, you know, you grow up knowing I hate theft, I don't steal, I work hard for my money. Those are the values you're known for, Mabato. So when you start now saying, okay, I'm just going to get it, it's only to just take my son to hospital, it becomes quickly a slippery slope. Now, what happens with many young girls, they do not take time to understand the issue and evaluate the outcome. That's why this framework is critical. They're not going to be able to call Elaine at midnight and say, now it's $200, now it's $400, this time it's this boy. They have to have this framework that enables them whenever they're in such a situation to evaluate. If I take the money, yes, I'll get the son treated, but on the other option, this is what it will mean. I'll lose credibility with the organization, lose trust, and all that kind of thing. So when they have this framework, hopefully they're able to first think before rushing headlong. If it's a blesser, they're able to say, I'm not going to rush headlong into the blessing situation. So the framework is critical. But there's one thing I wanted to bring out, because the way you posed the question with Mabato, it was like, it has happened. Many times women, we don't forgive ourselves when we have fallen short, when we have messed up our values or our value system, or when we have made a mistake, because at times genuinely, she will feel so at pain and she will take the money. And then we live with that for the rest of our lives. It haunts us. Or maybe it's an abortion, or maybe it's you've slept with a professor once, you were misguided. So we want to tell girls and young women that, look, at times we fall short of our value system, but it doesn't mean we hang ourselves. We can forgive ourselves. We can move on. We can create new value systems to replace these other value systems.
We can get up from that situation, because
thank you,
nobody is perfect.
Thank you. And we want the girls to know that, because often it holds them back. It holds us back as women. As even when you're running for office, you're saying, "Oh my God, everyone is going to be looking at me and saying, isn't that the girl 20 years ago who took the 400 rand? That's the girl," and it holds us back from so many dreams. And even ourselves, we don't forgive ourselves. So girls must know that, yes, but of course, don't make it a habit. You fall, you know. But what we are trying to tell the girls is that create a value system that helps you stand strong in the face of difficult decision making. But when you fall short, learn to forgive yourself and to move forward.
Learn from the experience going forward.
Yes.
That is it. Cool. Okay.
Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you, Batu. Thank you, Lane, for that excellent role play. That was really so much discussion, wonderfully engaging. Thank you so much. Ladies, before we go, I'd like to take a photograph, please. Can I ask you to all turn on your videos so we can see your beautiful faces for the last time?
Can I just put some lipstick on, please?
Steffi is very kindly off to take a photo of each screen for us. So we want to see your best looks, please. It's going to be ladies without photo. There we go. I love the backgrounds. Smiling. Oh, and babies too. I love it. Ah, Lida, it's so cute. Wonderful. So as we're getting ready for the videos, I just wanted to say thank you everyone for joining us today, and welcome to G4G. We are so grateful to have you with us, and we look forward to working with you and doing amazing things together. And also, I just wanted to let you know that we will be sharing the slide pack with you afterwards. We will also be sharing the videos with you, which we'll load onto YouTube. And we will be asking you to provide us with feedback. So straight after the session, we're going to send out a feedback survey. Please complete it. It's so important. We need that feedback to make sure that we make future sessions much better. But now we're going to do a photograph. And then
Valerie, one of the things I think we really need to follow up on is the people who want to start cohorts. So remember, some of us have signed on 2 cohorts that are not yet activated. University of Pretoria, Tomorrow Trust, Asnath Mahapa. Please, if you now have an idea of how to set up a small circle, so there are people like Joyce. Joyce joined this the Girls for Girls with a very clear idea about which group of women she wants to work with. And we had said to Joyce, can you first go through what it means to be a mentor with University of Pretoria? But if it's now a possibility that maybe Joyce can team up with Elaine and Valerie, people who have experience, so that they're able to start running small circles, I really want to encourage you, because we have 573 girls that have signed up in South Africa. Right now, we are not even addressing 100 of those. I am so worried that the year is going to end and we'll not even have been able to tackle half of them. So I am now deliberately encouraging, please reach out to us after this. You have my phone number. We really want to start the smaller circle so that we keep the energy and fire of Girls for Girls going. We cannot wait for COVID to end and for us to be having the 50 group meetings. If that is not about to happen, we are going to start small. So please get in touch with me. Thank you very much. That's what I wanted to say.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Rita.
All right, everyone. Big smiles.
Everyone ready? Can I go?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Okay, just give me a second so I can take the second screen. One second. Okay.
Should we stay smiling? Should we keep smiling?
Yes. Yes. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Thank you, guys. Perfect.
Okay,
thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you
so much.
Next lovely, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you. All the best.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye, Mobile.
Bye, Elaine.
Bye. Elaine.
Bye,
Okay, take
Bye.
care, guys. Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.